Chapter 537. Hyojin, who was dressed as Homasubi, didn't stay in the village for too long. After talking with Richa, he left the village quietly. Not long after, he arrived outside the Danzo route base. This time, Hyojin used the fire release clone to appear in the public's eyes. Apart from asking for money from the three generations, he also wanted Homasubi to take over the role of Kazuma and participate in Danzo's plan to improve the Chimera technique. After all, the Type A wind release clone is too damaged and can't be used in a short period of time. Moreover, the improvement and development of the Chimera technique cannot be delayed, so Hyojin must participate in the whole process. This time, the improvement of Nagato's strength caused Hyojin to feel a sense of urgency. At the moment, no one can tell what Nagato's limit is, and no one can predict what Nagato's next plan will be. Therefore, Hyojin can't waste any time. Whether it's the improvement of the Chimera technique or the advancement of the Kekiinet plan, he must speed up the progress as much as possible. Whoosh, as if they had already expected Hyojin's arrival, two figures quickly landed in front of Hyojin and respectfully said, "Danzo, Sama is waiting for you in the base. Please come with us." Hyojin nodded indifferently. Following the two root ninjas, Hyojin met Danzo in the base. After dismissing the two root ninjas, Danzo first looked at Hyojin and said, "I hope Amatsukami can abide by the previous agreement." Hyojin froze for a second and asked, "What agreement?" Danzo frowned. "Amatsukami is trying to fool this old man?" Kazuma clearly told this old man that Amatsukami will support this old man to ascend to the position of Naruto. Hearing this, Hyojin suddenly realized, no wonder this guy has been jumping up and down in the village recently, so this is the reason why he is so confident. Hyojin was speechless. Previously, he went to Danzo with the identity of Kazuma to borrow Danzo's wealth and power to develop the Chimera technique. Supporting Danzo was just an excuse to cooperate with Danzo. After all, he needed a suitable reason to get close to Danzo. But he didn't expect Danzo to take this seriously. Moreover, the village was destroyed, and three generations were facing a crisis of trust, which gave Danzo an opportunity. Seeing that Kuroda was silent, Danzo snorted coldly. "What's wrong? Did Hyojin give you a new offer?" With Danzo's influence, he naturally knows that Hyojin just met three generations Naruto. Thinking for a moment, Hyojin deliberately didn't answer, tacitly agreeing to Danzo's speculation. Danzo then said, "Humph, what can Hyojin give you? I know his character. He can't give you anything, but this old man is different. As long as Amatsukami supports this old man to ascend to the position of Naruto, this old man can give the entire country to Amatsukami." Hyojin was startled, thinking that he heard wrong. Danzo turned his back to Kuroda and said in a hopeful tone, "The era of the 5 great shinobi villages will come to an end in this old man's hands. And at that time, the entire land of water and the neighboring islands will be handed over to Amatsukami to be managed by this old man. I believe you can feel this old man's sincerity." "I don't feel it at all. The country of water is not yours. What right do you have to make decisions? Trying to tempt me with this kind of empty promise. Do you think I'm an idiot?" Hyojin couldn't help but curse inwardly. Seeing that Hyojin was still silent, Danzo looked back at Hyojin and said with confidence, "Hyojin can't offer such a price. You won't refuse me." Hyojin suddenly realized that what Danzo said just now seemed to be serious. So he said, "I didn't expect him to have the ambition to unify the shinobi world. This guy is really..." For a moment, Hyojin couldn't think of how to describe Danzo. After a moment, Hyojin said, "This time, I am here to replace Kazuma to complete the improvement of Chimera Jutsu. As for your proposal, I will report it to the organization." Danzo frowned, and his face became gloomy. Ignoring Danzo's ugly expression, Hyojin directly said, "Take me to the laboratory." Danzo hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded and ordered a root ninja to lead Hyojin to the laboratory. Although he is very dissatisfied with Homasubi's attitude, but reason tells him that now is not the time to fall out with Amatsukami. Not to mention that the Chimera Jutsu has not been completed yet, he still needs Amitsukami to provide technical support, and use Amitsukami to keep Orochimaru in check. After Hyojin left, Orochimaru's figure came out of the shadows and said with a playful smile, "It seems that Homusubi doesn't like you very much." "Humph." Danzo snorted and said, "This is the reason why this old man hates Uchiha. Uchiha should not exist in the shinobi world." Danzo is deeply influenced by the second-generation Naruto, and he has an indelible hostility towards the Uchiha clan. Orochimaru said, thoughtfully, "Amitsukami should know about the grudge between you and the Uchiha clan, and at this time, they actually sent an Uchiha. I am afraid that it will be detrimental to our plan." Danzo said, "We need to contact Kazuma as soon as possible." Orochimaru shook his head. "I was also there at the time, and the injuries on Kazuma's body didn't seem to be a disguise." Although Orochimaru didn't intervene much in the battle that night, but he was watching the whole process, and it can be said that he has a clear grasp of the situation. Danzo sighed. This old man has already warned him not to interfere too much, but he didn't listen. This result is also his own fault." Obviously, Danzo has already regarded Kazuma as the side that supports him in Amitsukami, and Homusubi as the side that opposes him. He thinks that there must be different factions in Amitsukami, and with Kazuma's injury, the faction that supports him is temporarily at a disadvantage. As for why Homusubi of Amitsukami is hostile to him, he isn't surprised at all, because his attitude towards Uchiha is well known, and as a member of the Uchiha clan, it is normal for Homusubi to be hostile to him. With a smile on his face, Orochimaru asked, "Are we still going to continue with our plan?" Danzo heavily hit the ground with his cane and said, "Of course, no one can stop this old man." The aging of Danzo's body didn't diminish his ambition. On the contrary, his ambition is increasing day by day, and has reached a point where it is difficult to contain. At this time, even if there is a cliff in front of him, he will not stop. Chapter 538. Hearing Danzo's answer, Orochimaru smiled lightly. He wasn't surprised. Orochimaru knows Danzo better than anyone else, because he has witnessed the whole process of Danzo's degeneration from an elder who maintained my stability in the dark to a slave of power. It can be said that Orochimaru is the first person in Konoha to realize that Danzo has lost his way, and for Danzo, who has lost his way in power, this opportunity is too rare, he can't miss it. For as the head of the 5 great shinobi villages, this is the first time he has experienced such a thing. Such a disaster, no matter which Naruto generation, Naruto will fall into the whirlpool of public opinion. One must know that in the previous 3 great shinobi wars, no matter how cruel they were, none of them affected Konoha, let alone razing Konoha to the ground overnight. In the minds of most my shinobi, they still maintain the idea that Mai is the strongest shinobi in the world and the head of the 5 great shinobi villages. Therefore, although they can understand the difficulties of the 3 generations Naruto, and know that this disaster was caused by the enemy being too strong, emotionally, they still subconsciously blame the 3 generations for the destruction of their home. After all, the name Naruto represents responsibility, and no matter how many reasons and excuses there are, the destruction of Konoha is something that Naruto can't escape from. After thinking for a moment, Orochimaru asked again, "If Amitsukami really falls to the old man's side, our next plan will be greatly affected." Danzo shook his head and said with certainty, "Don't worry. This old man knows Ikari better than anyone. He can't offer a higher price. Amitsukami will not choose to cooperate with him." This old man now suspects that Amitsukami sent Homusubi to force this old man to take a step back and maximize their benefits. I'm afraid that the country of water is not enough to satisfy them. Orochimaru nodded. This possibility does exist. Danzo glanced at Orochimaru and said, "The progress of the Chimera technique must be accelerated." Orochimaru smiled in a boastful manner and said, "I've already made a major breakthrough on my side. Right now, what's limiting our progress is the part that Wind Chimes is in charge of. I hope that the fire demon who replaced wind chimes won't disappoint us. In terms of scientific research, Orochimaru has the capital to be proud. Hearing Orochimaru mention Homasubi again, Danzo frowned unconsciously. He always felt that it was inappropriate to let an Uchiha interfere in his core plan. At this time, Orochimaru's eyes narrowed as he asked tentatively, "Now you can start choosing your targets. Are you going to fuse with those Kekkei limit boundaries?" Danzo said lightly, "I haven't decided yet." Knowing that Danzo wouldn't tell him the truth, Orochimaru didn't ask any more questions, turned around, and walked into the shadows, in the underground laboratory of the root. Hyojin glanced at the progress report handed to him by the lab assistant, and his pupils shrunk slightly under the mask. From this report, during the days when he was not around, the part that Orochimaru was in charge of had advanced a lot, and several difficult scientific research problems were solved one by one. It seems that Orochimaru and Danzo are still working together. It was not difficult for Hyojin to come to this conclusion, because when the Yakuza organization attacked the village, he and Orochimaru were both in the laboratory, so they were clear about each other's experimental progress. Now that the part that Orochimaru was in charge of had a major breakthrough, it undoubtedly showed that the cooperation between Orochimaru and Danzo did not stop because of the previous war. These days, Orochimaru was still carrying out the improvement experiment of the Chimera technique. Thinking of this, Hyojin's face changed, and a guess came to him. Orochimaru secretly kidnapped the Nine-Tails human Jinchuriki from the village. Logically speaking, even if the Danzo did not completely fall out with him, they would at least suspend their cooperation. But the fact is not so. Danzo still maintained a cooperative relationship with him. This shows that Danzo and Orochimaru may have reached some kind of agreement in private. And thinking that Danzo is actively seeking the position of Naruto in the village, Hyojin feels that Naruto and Hinata, in the hands of Orochimaru, are likely to become the bargaining chips for Danzo to seek the position of Naruto. Just imagine, if Danzo and Orochimaru conspire to rescue the Nine-Tails human Jinchuriki and the eldest daughter of the Hyuga clan, then Danzo's reputation in the village will inevitably increase greatly, and the Hyuga clan will also have to lean towards him on the issue of Naruto. At that time, as long as he has the support of other great clans, it is not impossible for him to replace 3 generations and sit on the position of Naruto. Will Orochimaru hand over Naruto to Danzo? Does he not want to exchange Naruto for Sasuke in the hands of the Akatsuki? Or did Danzo make some conditions that Orochimaru can't refuse? Previously, Hyojin has always believed that there is bound to be a hostage exchange between the Akatsuki and Orochimaru. After all, Naruto is useless in the hands of Orochimaru, and Sasuke is also of little significance in the hands of the Akatsuki. But now that I think about it, this idea seems to be wishful thinking, because whether it is the Akatsuki or Orochimaru, neither of them is a man of integrity. There is not enough mutual trust between them. Even if both sides agree to exchange hostages, I'm afraid that each side has their own ulterior motives. Quietly putting the experiment report aside, Hyojin started his own experiment. Although he didn't conduct any experiments in the past few days, his brain was not idle. Taking advantage of the time when he was on duty in the village, he formulated several experiment plans in his mind. So when he came to the laboratory, he directly skipped the process of adaptation and familiarization and started the tedious experiment. The breakthrough on Orochimaru's side was mainly in the area of colloidal materials. Orochimaru found a special colloidal material, which is very active at a temperature of 45 degrees Celsius, almost comparable to the colloidal material used to make Ghost Sprout in Hiruzen. But when the temperature is lower than 30 degrees Celsius, its activity will gradually decrease, and if the temperature drops to 0 degrees, it will completely lose its activity. This colloidal material affected by external temperature, to some extent, is a natural and controllable colloidal material. As long as the temperature is artificially controlled, the risk of it going out of control can be fundamentally eliminated. And such a breakthrough can be said to be a key. If before, Hyojin couldn't judge how much time it would take to improve the ghost sprout technique and how much money he would need to invest. Then after this breakthrough, the time and money he would need to invest became predictable. Hey, Orochimaru really has a skill in this area. Chapter 539. The discovery of the new colloid accelerated the improvement of the Chimera technique. Many of the problems that previously plagued Hyojin were solved because of the discovery of the new colloid. In the next few days, Hyojin redesigned a set of Kekkei Genkai fusion ritual according to the characteristics of the new colloid. On the original basis, he added a set of temperature control system to the ritual. By adjusting the external temperature, the activity of the new colloid can be enhanced or weakened, so that the new colloid can always be in a controllable state. At the same time, he also carried out a round of limit tests on the new colloid. The test results were even better than he expected. The limit values of the new colloid reached the standard of the old colloid, fully possessing the ability to replace the old colloid. In addition to conducting experiments in the root base, Hyojin, who received a huge sum of 100 million Ryo, also used the Shadow Clone to purchase various instruments and test materials from all over the shinobi world and built a brand new colloid cultivation laboratory in his own laboratory in the Sky Fortress. This new laboratory alone cost Hyojin more than 70 million Ryo. However, because of the high price, the equipment in Hyojin's new laboratory is almost comparable to the equipment in the Danzo S root-based laboratory. Therefore, any research results in the Danzo S root-based laboratory can be perfectly replicated by Hyojin in his new laboratory. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, a month has passed. After this month of reconstruction, the desolation and mess of the village after the war has changed, and it has once again become full of vitality. Walking on the street, all you can see are brand new streets and exquisite houses. The external traces of the previous catastrophe have almost been swept away, but the haze in people's hearts is not so easy to clear. All kinds of unfavorable remarks about the three generations began to circulate among the villagers. Even Hyojin, who doesn't pay much attention to this aspect, can feel that there's a pair of hands secretly manipulating the public opinion. This method of creating momentum, there is no need to guess to know that it is the Danzo. But this time, Danzo used an overt scheme. He did not create rumors, nor did he distort the truth. He only aroused the emotions hidden in the hearts of the people, revealing the doubts and dissatisfaction that the people suppressed in their hearts towards the three generations. Hyojin's courtyard had also been restored. Although the interior was not completely renovated, it was barely livable. After completing the Umbu patrol mission, Hyojin returned home, threw the Umbu mask on his face aside, and then lay on the sofa to think about the next step of the experiment plan. For the past few days, he had been using his fire escape clone to participate in the development of the Oni-Yero technique. While trying to improve the Oni-Yero technique, he was also closely monitoring the progress made by Danzo and Orochimaru. Thanks to Danzo's lack of trust in Orochimaru, as the party that Danzo uses to balance Orochimaru, Hyojin can timely know all of the experimental progress of Orochimaru. Of course, Hyojin believes in the progress of his experiment, and Orochimaru can also get in the first place. Whether it is Hyojin, Orochimaru, or Danzo, the three parties maintained a tacit understanding, suppressed all differences, and pushed forward the improvement of the Oni-Yero technique together. At this moment, a twisted whirlpool appeared out of thin air in Hyojin's living room. Then, a familiar figure walked out of the whirlpool. Obsidian? My identity has been exposed? Hyojin was secretly surprised. He didn't expect that Obsidian would suddenly come to find him. Walking out of the whirlpool, Obsidian crossed his arms over his chest and said in a low tone, "Hyojin, you don't have to worry. I just came to talk to you about a deal." A deal? Hyojin's eyes slightly narrowed, and his mind quickly analyzed the purpose of Obsidian's visit. Judging from Obsidian's expression and behavior, Hyojin felt that Obsidian shouldn't have discovered his identity as the leader of Amatsukami. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be so indifferent. Your disciple is Hugeningtsi, right? After a pause, Obsidian said with a playful smile, "You should also know that he is in our hands. I have no interest in killing an innocent child. If you are willing to do one thing for me, I can return him to you." This idiot wants to use Ningxi to threaten me. Hyojin's expression changed. He roughly guessed the purpose of Obsidian's visit. And the moment he guessed the purpose of Obsidian's visit, Kuroto showed his rich acting experience. His face immediately showed a look of surprise and anger, and his hand slowly reached for the ninja bag on his waist. Glancing at the small movements of Hyojin's hands, Obsidian grinned and said, "Don't force me to kill you." Hyojin stopped his hand from reaching for the ninja bag at the right time, and the expression of anger on his face became even more intense. Looking at Hyojin's angry expression, Obsidian was secretly proud. Kuroto, this idiot. He is still the same as when he was in the ninja school. He didn't make any progress at all. Hyojin stared at Obsidian, while acting helpless and angry, while secretly analyzing the success rate of a sneak attack. Kuroto has many means to kill Obsidian, but because of the forbidden technique Izanagi, he doesn't have the means to kill Obsidian with a single blow. What's more, this is a village. Once he makes a move, his identity as the leader of Amitsukami will be exposed. This is one of the reasons why he didn't act in a hurry. At this time, Obsidian continued, "You should understand that I can easily kill you, so cooperate with me honestly." Hyojin pondered for a moment and said, "I'm a member of the Hyuga branch family. I have a caged bird on my head. You want me to betray the village? Dream on." No. Obsidian waved his hand casually and said, "I have no interest in Mai's information. Cooperate with me, and you don't have to betray your village." Hyojin was startled, and he was puzzled. "What do you want me to do?" Obsidian stopped smiling and said in a deep voice, "I want you to collect information about Amitsukami for me." For a moment, Hyojin didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and the expression on his face almost froze. He didn't expect Obsidian to ask him, the leader of Amitsukami, to act as an informant for Amitsukami, to collect information for Amitsukami. Obsidian said, "You don't have to find excuses. I know you are the leader of Mai Zambu, and you must have access to the agreement between Mai and Amitsukami. For your own life, and for the life of your disciple, I hope you can make a wise choice." Hyojin looked at Obsidian, and in his heart, he thought, this Obsidian is really an idiot. Chapter 540. As their eyes met, the atmosphere in the room became tense. It seems like Akatsuki didn't get any information from other channels, so they turned their attention to the village. They want to find out more about Amitsukami through the village. Hyojin didn't hide the thoughtful expression on his face, but he wasn't thinking about Obsidian's threat, but Obsidian's motive. There was no doubt that after the previous battle, Akatsuki was more and more afraid of Amitsukami. This could be seen from the fact that Obsidian personally appeared in Mai and used intimidation and other means to develop his informants in Mai. However, Obsidian's luck wasn't that good. Coincidentally, his informant went directly to Amitsukami's leader and exposed Akatsuki's next action to Hyojin. Obsidian seemed to enjoy Hyojin's contemplation, and after a while, he chuckled and said, "It's time to make a decision. I don't have time to waste with you. Should I promise him first, then find a chance to set a trap and kill him when he's careless?" Hyojin deliberately showed a hesitant expression on his face, but in his heart, he was thinking about how to take advantage of Obsidian's negligence. Seeing that Hyojin was still hesitating, Obsidian's face sank, and while releasing his killing intent, he threatened, "Hyojin, Akatsuki knows everything about you. In our eyes, you don't have any secrets, so don't think about luck. You don't have a choice. Oh, by the way, you seem to have a fiancé." Hyojin's eyes twitched as he coldly glanced at Obsidian. "Don't look at me like that. As long as you choose to cooperate with us, whether it's your disciple or the people around you, they won't be in danger." After a short pause, Obsidian continued, "The bird in the cage on your forehead is not impossible to get rid of. As long as you can provide us with information about Amitsukami, we will think of a way to help you solve the problem on your forehead." We might even make an exception to let you join our Akatsuki. Obsidian understood that it was difficult to make Hyojin willingly work for him by simply threatening him, so he offered a price. He thinks that he has grasped the vital point of Hyojin, because the stronger the Hyuga clan is, the more disgusted they are with a caged bird that can control their own life and death. Of course, when he said that he would help Hyojin break the caged bird, it was all empty promises with no sincerity. Even if Akatsuki really has the ability to break the caged bird of the Hyuga clan, they won't put their energy into such a troublesome matter. At least in the eyes of Obsidian, a trivial Hyojin is not worth the effort of Akatsuki. Hyojin pretended to be surprised and asked, "Can you really help me get rid of the caged bird on my forehead?" Obsidian gently nodded and said in a confident tone, "Of course, there is nothing that Akatsuki can't do." Hyojin immediately said, "Well, I could try to help you inquire about Amitsukami, but I can't guarantee that I will be able to get any information about Amitsukami." Obsidian smiled with satisfaction. "You have made the right choice. As long as you can provide us with information about Amitsukami, we will immediately return your disciple and help you get rid of the caged bird." Hyojin felt that the time was ripe, so he asked, "Then how should I address you? Also, if I get any information, how should I contact you?" As long as he could actively contact Obsidian, he could set up a trap in advance, so the only thing that Hyojin really cared about was the way to contact Obsidian and mobilize Obsidian. Obsidian deliberately mystified and said, "Who I am is not important. You only need to know that my eyes are always on you. And you don't have to take the initiative to contact me. I will come to you again." After saying that, without waiting for Hyojin to ask again, Obsidian stepped back and disappeared into the twisting vortex. There is no doubt that Obsidian also understood that Hyojin might pretend to agree to his threat, then turn around and report to the village, and then lead to Amitsukami's trap. Tieska. Watching the vortex in the room slowly disappear, Hyojin spat softly after confirming that Obsidian had left. With his current insight and perception, even if Obsidian had holy aura, it would be difficult for him to get close to him without being noticed. This time, he was caught off guard by Obsidian. Firstly, he really did not expect Obsidian to come to him directly, and secondly, he was completely focused on thinking about the experiment plan, so he was completely distracted. As for Obsidian's threat that his eyes would always be on Hyojin before he left, Hyojin scoffed. If Obsidian really had the guts, Hyojin had 100 ways to trick him. In a practice field outside the Uchiha clan's territory, whoosh whoosh, with the sound of sharp weapons cutting through the air, a few shurikens hit the bull SI in different positions without a single mistake. At this time, Itachi pulled off the black cloth covering his eyes. His younger brother, Sasuke, was kidnapped, and there was no news of him until now. Although Itachi believed in Hyojin's judgment, he was inevitably anxious, so he could only force himself to maintain his state of mind by practicing throwing techniques. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, a crisp applause came from the side of the field, followed by a deep and hoarse voice, as expected of Itachi Uchiha. Itachi turned his head abruptly and looked at Obsidian, who was wearing a vortex mask, and the 3 Sharingan in his eye sockets slowly rotated. "Don't be nervous. I'm just here to talk to you about a deal." Obsidian, who had just left Hyojin's house, immediately found Itachi, but unlike the arrogance and pride he had when he was in Hyojin's house, Obsidian maintained a state of nothingness at this time. Obviously, Obsidian is still quite vigilant near the Uchiha clan's land. After all, Jishui, who has the Manjikyu Sharingan, is also currently in the clan's land. Itachi doesn't have as rich acting experience as Hyojin. He instantly judged that there was no chance for him to make a move, so he asked blankly, "What deal?" "There are 2 fire demons in Amitsukami's organization. I think your Uchiha clan also knows about it, right? Why? Aren't you curious about their identities?" Obsidian threw out a topic that he thought Itachi would be interested in. Itachi said calmly, "I'm more curious about your identity." With 2 chuckles, Obsidian said, "Uchiha with 2 Manjikyu Sharingan can't appear out of thin air. They must have left traces in the Uchiha clan." I suspect that they are among the group of Uchiha clansmen who disappeared during the Third Shinobi World War. You are the eldest son of the clan leader, so you have the right to read the genealogy and investigate various documents. As long as you help me find them, I will return your brother Sasuke to you. Itachi's expressionless face showed some expression. You want me to help you find the fire demons of Amatsuka. Chapter 541. Under the vortex mask, the corners of Obsidian's mouth rose slightly. Not bad. Using the information about Homusubi in exchange for your brother's life. This is the deal I want to discuss with you. Good. Itachi looked at Obsidian and nodded without much hesitation. Itachi doesn't know why this mysterious Akatsuki member in front of him suddenly came to find him, but this doesn't prevent him from taking the opportunity to keep Sasuke safe for the time being. I'll come to you again. After leaving this sentence, Obsidian retracted into the vortex and disappeared without a trace. A moment later, Obsidian appeared in a remote grove outside of my village. At this time, Zetsu poked his body out of the ground and said, "The reconstruction of my village seems to have changed the perception barrier. I can no longer enter and exit as I did before. As one of the 5 great shinobi villages, my village has always been under the protection of the perception barrier. It's just that because the previous perception barrier has been running for a long time, the frequency of the barrier is well known to many people. So in the original timeline, people like Orochimaru and Itachi can easily bypass the perception barrier and enter and exit Konoha at will. This time, because the village suffered a catastrophe, the perception barrier covering the entire village was destroyed, so instead of repairing the damaged perception barrier bit by bit, it's better to build a new one. Therefore, the village took advantage of the reconstruction to design a new perception barrier. Obsidian chuckled lightly. Don't worry, it won't be a problem soon. Zetsu looked at Obsidian and said, "It seems that your operation this time went very smoothly. Well, I developed 2 informants in my village. One of them is the Umbu of my village, and the other is a member of the Uchiha clan." With a smile, the masked man continued, "They should be able to find out something that I'm interested in." Zetsu asked doubtfully, "Can they be trusted?" Obsidian recalled the scene when he first came into contact with Hyojin and Itachi. Hyojin's anger when he was threatened, his surprise when he heard that the caged bird could be freed, and Itachi's worried expression when he heard about Sasuke. These scenes flashed past Obsidian's eyes like a lantern. Collecting his thoughts, Obsidian said lightly, "They are just 2 mediocre people who are bound by boredom. They can't do anything. I hope your informant can help us find out more about Amatsuka," Jushao said. Obsidian then asked, "Is there any news from Orochimaru? The 9 Tails Jinchuriki must be mastered as soon as possible. We can't delay any longer." Zetsu shrugged and said helplessly, "Orochimaru is very careful. I'm afraid it will take some time to find him." Obsidian also knows that Orochimaru is very cunning. So he said, "Continue to contact Orochimaru with the excuse of exchanging hostages. As long as he still covets Sasuke, he will definitely reveal a flaw." Zetsu nodded and said, "Okay." Obsidian pondered for a moment and said, "Pick another clone to be responsible for the 2 informants that I will develop today." In the village, after Obsidian left, Itachi quickly found Jishuei and told Jishuei about the Akatsuki organization looking for him. Immediately, the 2 of them went directly to Hyojin's house. They weren't worried that the masked man would spy on them, since they were on full alert. Even with his divine aura, the masked man wouldn't be able to get close to them without them noticing. As soon as he saw Jishuei and Itachi coming together, Hyojin smiled and welcomed them into the house. After sitting down, Hyojin asked Itachi, "If I'm not wrong, the Akatsuki organization should be looking for you, right?" Obsidian can use Ningxi to threaten Hyojin, so naturally, he will also use Sasuke to threaten Itachi. This is something that can be expected. Itachi was a little surprised. "Senpai, how did you guess it?" Hyojin smiled casually and said, "Because they also found me." "I see." After a short pause, Itachi said, "The one who found me is the Akatsuki member wearing the vortex mask. Because he is in the state of hibernation, I can't find a chance to attack him, so I can only pretend to agree to his request and help him investigate Amatsukumi's homisabi. Jishuei asked, Senpai, don't tell me that they are looking for you to help them investigate Amatsukumi? Kuroto nodded while sipping his tea leisurely. Obsidian is looking for Hyojin because of his identity as a member of the Umbu, but in fact, only Hyojin, 3 generations, Zhuan Shaochun, and a few other people know that Mai and Amatsukumi don't have any written cooperation agreement, only a verbal agreement. Therefore, Mai doesn't know much more about Amatsukumi than the Akatsuki, so it's impossible to get information from Mai. Jishuei and Itachi looked at each other and were speechless. The Akatsuki's informants are all Amatsukumi's people, and even Amatsukumi's leader is among them, which makes them not know whether to laugh or cry. Itachi then asked, Senpai, what should we do next? Putting down the teacup, Hyojin said slowly, this is an opportunity for us. They want Amatsukumi's information, and we can use this method to give them the information we want them to know. Jishuei added, we can also set up an ambush. Hyojin nodded. Obsidian has suffered a lot in the hands of Amatsukumi, so he will be very careful at the beginning, and he will even ask others to do it, but once he is sure that Hyojin and Itachi are not a threat, he will definitely let down his guard, and at that time, Hyojin can set up an inescapable net and easily get rid of him. Thinking of this, Hyojin glanced at Itachi. At present, Itachi's sword of Tatsukami is the best means to restrain Obsidian. When Itachi and Jishuei found the 2 artifacts, Sword of Tatsukami and Yagami no Kagami, Hyojin asked them about the ins and outs of these 2 artifacts in detail. After learning that these 2 artifacts are really in a spiritual state, and that they are bound to the user's spiritual body, Hyojin felt quite regretful. At the same time, this also made him understand why Itachi, who was about to die in the original world, entrusted everything to his younger brother Sasuke, even leaving his Manjikyu Sharingan to Sasuke, but he didn't give Sasuke the Tenseigan and the Yagami mirror, these 2 powerful artifacts. It turns out that it's not that Itachi didn't want to give them to Sasuke, but these 2 artifacts are bound to Itachi's spiritual body. Only when his spiritual body is completely destroyed can the artifacts change owners. And when Itachi's spiritual body is destroyed, Itachi won't have the ability to entrust the 2 artifacts to Sasuke, so he can only choose the way he obtained the artifacts, setting up a test for future generations, letting the future generations try to use their luck to see if they can control the artifacts. Chapter 542. Shadow, Clone Jutsu. Bang bang in the midst of the 2 youthful voices. White smoke rolled out of thin air, and when the white smoke dissipated, whether it was Sasuke or Ningxi, both of them had an identical copy of themselves beside them. Looking at the shadow clone jutsu displayed by Sasuke and Ningxi, Shinichi smiled and said, not bad, although there are still some flaws, but it should be more than enough to fool the average Chunin. As soon as the 2 children heard this, they were immediately overjoyed. Shadow Clone Jutsu is not an ordinary ninjutsu. Its difficulty level has reached B level, and among all B level ninjutsu, it is also one of the most difficult to master, often only when the ninjas reach the Chunin stage where they try to practice it. Because it involves the consumption of a huge amount of chakra, Shadow Clone Jutsu has a certain degree of risk for children who have not yet fully developed. In its advanced version, multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu has been listed as a forbidden technique by the village and recorded in the Book of Seals. Therefore, whether it is Sasuke or Ningxi, they haven't been allowed to learn this ninjutsu by their elders, so they won't be able to use Shadow Clone Jutsu until now. Shinichi doesn't have such concerns in this regard. In his eyes, the shinobi world is a battlefield where only the fittest survive, and if you want to survive, you must have the ability to protect yourself. However, Shinichi was a little surprised because he didn't expect that Sasuke and Ningxi would have such high talent. After just a little practice, they have basically mastered the essentials of Shadow Clone Jutsu. Looking at the triumphant Sasuke and the happy Ningxi, Shinichi secretly sighed. Sasuke is indeed a genius who awakened his Manjikyu Sharingan at the age of 8. If he is carefully trained, it shouldn't be difficult for him to awaken his Manjikyu Sharingan. Ningxi's talent is also not ordinary. No wonder the boss accepted him as a disciple. Ahem! After lightly coughing twice to attract the attention of the two children, Shinichi put on a serious face and said, "Learning ninjutsu is only the first step, and also the simplest step. Don't be complacent just because you have learned a certain ninjutsu. The real test for a ninja is when to use the ninjutsu. And what kind of ninjutsu to use? You should know that defeating the enemy and wasting chakra is often only a single thought." Sasuke smiled proudly. "Shinichi-san, you underestimate us too much. We are ninjas who carry the name of geniuses, and we know this already." Niji and Shinichi weren't familiar with each other, so he didn't treat Shinichi as casually as Sasuke. He respectfully bowed to Shinichi and said, "Senior Shinichi, thank you for your guidance." Shinichi waved his hand and said, "I just taught you the basic ninjutsu. It can't be regarded as guidance." After that, Shinichi moved his eyes to Sasuke and asked with a smile, "Sasuke, what did Jishue and your brother usually teach you?" "They taught me a lot. I have learned all the throwing techniques of our Uchiha clan." With a smile, Sasuke said proudly, "After opening my eyes, my brother and Jishue-san's training is actual combat training." "Actual combat training?" Shinichi raised his eyebrows and immediately said with a smile, "Hey, Jishue and your brother really spoil you. I didn't expect that they would accompany you to play ninja games." Sasuke suddenly pouted unhappily. "It's not a ninja game." "Is that so? Then let me tell you what real combat training is." Shinichi waved at Sasuke, motioning him to attack him. Seeing Shinichi's casual face, Sasuke quickly reminded him, "Shinichi-san, you have to recognize Shinichi-san, otherwise you will get hurt." As soon as he finished speaking, Sasuke's black eyes changed into a conspicuous scarlet and revealed a Magatama. Then he quickly made a seal and shouted, "Fire release! Great fireball technique!" Boom! In an instant, a huge fireball was spat out from Sasuke's mouth, bringing with it a scorching wave of air directly towards Shinichi, who was not far away. Not far away. Ningxi's expression froze, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. Hiss, such a strong chakra wave. How can he improve so quickly? The Great Fireball technique this time is even faster and stronger than the Great Fireball technique he used against a Sound Ninja previously. Sasuke's improvement was visible to the naked eye, and even Ningxi, who was known as a genius in the family, couldn't help but be amazed. The huge fireball reflected half of the sky, and with a whistling sound, it smashed towards Shinichi's position. The scorching heat even plowed a scorch mark on the ground, causing cracks to appear on the ground closest to the fireball. Huh! After the fireball whistled past, Sasuke suddenly frowned, because he found that Shinichi had disappeared. Not only Sasuke, but also Ningxi on the side was taken aback, and immediately activated his Byakugan to look for traces of Shinichi. Whoosh! At this moment, in the sound of the wind, a figure flashed in front of Sasuke. The sight in front of him darkened, and Sasuke subconsciously felt that something was wrong, and just as he was about to lock the single Magatama Sharingan in his eye socket, a sharp pain came from his abdomen. Bang! Immediately afterward, his whole body flew out like a kite without a string. His figure drew an arc in the air, and then fell to the ground fiercely, making a low muffled sound. On the side, Ningxi was also dumbfounded. That moment just now was too sudden. Even with the Byakugan, he didn't see the whole process clearly. He only vaguely saw a black shadow suddenly flashed in front of Sasuke, and then Sasuke's whole body flew out upside down. When he saw that Shinichi's eyes were still black, and he didn't even open his Sharingan, Ningxi sighed with emotion. This is the strength of Uchiha, who has the Manjikyu Sharingan. At this time, a twisted whirlpool appeared out of thin air. An obsidian's figure walked out of the whirlpool. He looked at Sasuke, who fell to the ground and still hasn't recovered, and said with a chuckle, "Shinichi, don't go too far." Shinichi smiled and said, "I just want him to see clearly what the real shinobi world is like." Obsidian looked at Ningxi on the side, and then glanced at Shinichi. He is a little curious why Shinichi, who has always been sloppy, suddenly cares so much about the two kids. Sasuke is, after all, a genius Uchiha who awakened his Sharingan at the age of 8, but Ningxi is just a kid from the Hyuga family, and it stands to reason that with Shinichi's arrogant temperament, he should be dismissive of him. Inside a base in Orochimaru, Naruto made hand seals and shouted, "Doppelganger Jutsu!" Bang! After a burst of white smoke, a yellow-faced, monkey version of Naruto appeared beside Naruto. Seeing this, Naruto was overjoyed and said, "Ha ha, I finally learned it." Hinata also applauded repeatedly on the side, congratulating Naruto for successfully displaying the doppelganger jutsu. Only Orochimaru had a gloomy expression, as if he accidentally swallowed a fly. Chapter 543. For a long time, Orochimaru has been quite confident in his teaching ability. He has taught many excellent ninjas. Even Hyojin, who seemed to be mediocre in his eyes, later grew into a figure that couldn't be underestimated. But after meeting Naruto, he began to doubt his teaching ability. A whole day, under his guidance, Naruto couldn't completely master the doppelganger jutsu, even after learning it for a whole day. This was simply unbelievable to him. Kimimaro only knew the sequence of hand seals, but he was able to learn the complete set of 3-body jutsu, including transfiguration jutsu and substitution jutsu. Haku, who was slightly worse, only took an hour to master the complete set of 3-body jutsu. Is this kid really the son of that guy from Minato? Suddenly, such a thought flashed in Orochimaru's mind. Although Minato was his competitor for the position of Naruto, even someone as proud as Orochimaru had to admit that Minato was the most talented ninja he had ever seen. That's why it's hard for him to imagine that Naruto, whose father is known as the Golden Flash, Yondaime Hokage Minato, and whose mother is the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki Vortex Kushina, is actually an idiot. At this time, Naruto came in front of Orochimaru and said, "Orochimaru-sensei, I learned the doppelganger jutsu." Since Orochimaru promised to teach Naruto jutsu, Naruto called Orochimaru Orochimaru-sensei, and his attitude towards Orochimaru also changed 180 degrees. Orochimaru's face darkened, and said in a hoarse voice, "This level is still far from being able to learn it." Naruto scratched his head. "But I've already created a doppelganger." Orochimaru glanced at Naruto's emaciated, mummy-like clone and thought to himself, maybe he doesn't have the talent to become a ninja. From Orochimaru's point of view, if one could not learn the doppelganger technique in half a day, he would basically be deemed as trash. Not to mention, Naruto had wasted a whole day without being able to master the doppelganger technique. Although he could also see that when Naruto performed ninjutsu, the chakra in his body was disturbed by the 9 tails, but for him, this was not the reason why he couldn't learn the most basic doppelganger. After shaking his head, Orochimaru turned around and walked towards the cave. Seeing Orochimaru turn around and leave without saying a word, Naruto wondered, "Sensei, Orochimaru? Sensei, Orochimaru?" Orochimaru ignored the shouts of Naruto behind him. He had always had no patience for idiots. Moreover, the careless Naruto always reminded him of the idiot Jiraiya. In the cave, Do greeted him and asked, "Lord Orochimaru, how's Naruto's cultivation?" Orochimaru said with a gloomy face, "From now on, you'll be responsible for guiding Naruto. Do you understand?" Do was stunned. Orochimaru glared at Do. "This is an order." "Yes, I understand." Do nodded quickly. Orochimaru looked around and said in a deep voice, "I'm going to mine in a few days. I'll leave this place to you for the time being. You have to ensure the safety of those 2 children." Do said, "Please rest assured." Orochimaru didn't say anything more. His figure flashed and disappeared from the cave. Inside the Danzo's root base, Lord Balrog, the secret meeting is set for half an hour later. Please be prepared. Hyojin, who was riding on the fire release avatar, listened to the report of the root researchers while sorting out the information at hand. After the unremitting efforts of Hyojin, Orochimaru, and a group of root researchers these days, the improvement of the Oni-Yero technique has entered the final stage. At this point, it is difficult to advance the improvement of the Oni-Yero technique with simple experiments. What is needed now is to formulate a specific devouring plan and the corresponding fusion ritual. This is an unavoidable problem, so the Danzo had to hold a secret meeting. Not long after, Hyojin brought the information to the secret meeting room. There are a total of 4 seats in the meeting room, which means that other than Danzo and the chief research officer of Root, only Hyojin and Orochimaru will participate in this secret meeting. Seeing Hyojin enter the meeting room wearing a flame-patterned mask, Danzo frowned. Kuroto has been trying his best to prevent Homusubi of Amatsukami from meeting Orochimaru in his base, because he is worried that Homusubi, who is hostile to him, will leak the news of him colluding with Orochimaru to Sandaime at this sensitive time. But today's meeting is about the success or failure of the Chimara technique, so he had no choice but to let the two meet. At the same time, Danzo is also very depressed because he has been trying to contact the wind chime of Amatsukami, but to no avail. Therefore, he can only suppress his temper and tolerate Balrog interfering with his core plan. After a while, Orochimaru also came to the secret meeting room. He glanced at Hyojin, who was controlling the fire clone, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Have we met somewhere before? The aura on your body is very familiar. Orochimaru has his own speculation about the identity of the 2 Balrog of Amatsukami, because he is one of the few people in the shinobi world who knows that Itachi Uchiha has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, and at the same time, he is also one of the few people who is still alive after fighting with Uchiha's fire. Hyojin heard Orochimaru's words, so he said coldly, "I advise you to keep your mouth shut." Orochimaru just snorted and didn't continue to dwell on this topic, and went straight to his seat. Amatsukami has more than 2 Balrog. There's also the powerful wind chime, and Yama, who is currently recognized as the strongest shinobi in the shinobi world. Therefore, Orochimaru doesn't intend to use the information in his hands to threaten Hyojin, because he knows better than anyone that if he offends both Amatsukami and Akatsuki at the same time, even he will die without a burial place. At this time, Danzo said, "Well, let's talk about this later. This old man wants to know why you two strongly requested to hold this meeting." Hyojin spread out the information in his hand and said to Danzo, "I need to know which Kekkei Jinkai you want to fuse with." Danzo frowned. This old man hasn't decided yet. Danzo naturally won't easily tell Hyojin and Orochimaru about his most important secret. Hyojin didn't budge an inch, then make a decision immediately. Orochimaru also agreed. This is related to the improvement of the final part of the Chimara technique, as well as the design of the fusion ritual. We must figure out in advance, otherwise the next step of the plan will not be able to be carried out. Chapter 544. Danzo had already anticipated the questions raised by Hyojin and Orochimaru. This was because the chief research officer of Root had already explained to him the effects of fusing different bloodline limit boundaries on the improvement of the Oni-Yero technique, as well as the final success rate of the fusion ceremony. To put it simply, fusing different blood limit boundaries required different degrees of fine-tuning of the art of Ghost Yero. This fine-tuning would affect the improvement of the entire art of Ghost Yero. Therefore, the earlier one decided on which blood limit boundaries to fuse. The earlier one could complete the final improvement of the art of Ghost Yero. At the same time, the final fusion ceremony also needed to be arranged according to the bloodline limit boundaries to be fused. Different bloodline limit boundaries would require different arrangements for the ceremony. Because of these various objective reasons, Hyojin and Orochimaru both pressured Danzo to immediately announce the bloodline limit boundaries that needed to be fused. Only in this way could the final part of the Guei-Yero technique be improved, and the final part of the fusion ceremony could be fully designed and planned. Facing Hyojin and Orochimaru's intense gaze, Danzo's face became even more gloomy. Danzo understood this principle, But for someone who was used to hiding in the dark, the bloodline limit boundaries he was going to fuse with was a core secret related to his life and death. Originally, he planned to delay as much as possible until the Oniyero technique was more or less complete. And after he ascended to the position of Naruto, he would get rid of Amatsukomi and Orochimaru, and let his own research team take over. With Mai's power, he would complete the final fusion ceremony independently to ensure that his core secret wouldn't be leaked. However, he greatly underestimated the joint research ability of Hyojin and Orochimaru and underestimated the progress of the Oniyero technique. Now that he hadn't ascended to the position of Naruto, he couldn't do it without the support of Amatsukomi and Orochimaru. So he was in a difficult position. Seeing that Danzo was hesitant, Kuroda simply said, "You don't have much choice, you don't have much choice." Danzo's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Orochimaru also looked at Hyojin with a puzzled expression. Hyojin explained, "The bloodline limit boundary of the Oniyero technique can't be chosen by the host at will. In order to improve the success of the fusion ceremony and let the various bloodline limit boundaries reach a delicate balance in the body, it is necessary to choose the bloodline limit boundary according to the different attributes of the chakra, so that each bloodline limit boundary is in a state of mutual enhancement and restraint in the body. This is the case with Hiriko." Danzo's brows furrowed, while the chief research officer beside him fell into deep thought. On the other side, Orochimaru gently nodded. Obviously, he also considered this problem. Hyojin didn't rush to speak again, but waited for Danzo and the others to digest the information he just provided. After a while, Danzo asked vigilantly, "Do you have any suggestions?" Hyojin glanced at Danzo and said lightly, "You have already transplanted Sharingan and Hashirama Naruto's cells, so your situation is more complicated than the average person." Danzo suddenly stood up and asked, "How do you know that this old man has transplanted Sharingan and Hashirama cells?" After transplanting Sharingan and Hashirama cells, Danzo regarded them as his trump card. Usually, he put a lot of effort in concealing it. Not only did he deliberately use a cane, but he also wrapped his arms and body with bandages. Moreover, he rarely appeared in public, so there are very few people who know that he has transplanted Sharingan and Hashirama cells. Without waiting for Hyojin to answer, Danzo glanced at Orochimaru, because Orochimaru was also one of the people who knew about the transplanting. After all, many of the technical problems during the transplanting were solved by Orochimaru. Feeling Danzo's undisguised killing intent, Orochimaru's mouth twitched, and he shrugged. "This has nothing to do with me." Orochimaru glanced at Hyojin. He vaguely guessed that it must be the Byakugan that discovered Danzo's secret and reported it to Amatsukomi, so the Homitsubi of Amatsukomi knew about it. But Danzo didn't know that Kazuma had a pair of Byakugan eyes hidden under the Yakuza mask. So in his opinion, Danzo was the one who unknowingly revealed his identity to Amatsukomi. Hyojin crossed his arms and said impatiently, "If Amatsukomi doesn't investigate your physical condition and design the corresponding fusion ritual, the probability of you surviving the ritual is 0. Sit down, I'm not finished yet." Danzo's suspicious eyes swept through Hyojin, Orochimaru, and even the CRO next to him, and finally sat down with a gloomy face. Hyojin flipped through the information and said, "Your physical condition is very complicated, but from a certain point of view, this is also a big advantage for you." Handing a document to Danzo, Kuroda continued, "The Kekitsu limit that Hiriko chose are Sharingan, representing the fire attribute, Steel Release, representing the earth attribute, Nether Release, representing the water attribute, Hakoshin, representing the wind attribute, and Mist Release, representing the lightning attribute. These 5 Kekitsu limit correspond to the 5 chakra attributes." Danzo nodded, but because of what happened just now, his face was still gloomy. Orochimaru's mouth curved into a smile, but his expression was indifferent because he was also at the scene of Hiriko's Kekitsu limit fusion ritual and watched the whole process of Hiriko completing the Kekitsu limit fusion ritual. Hyojin suddenly changed the topic and said, "However, What really allowed Hiriko to survive the Kekitsa limit fusion ritual wasn't the ritual he designed, but luck. In fact, there's a very fatal flaw in the ritual he designed, and his good luck, unbeknownst to him, made up for this flaw. Danzo was startled for a moment. A puzzled expression appeared on his face. The smile on Orochimaru's face also gradually disappeared, and his brows unconsciously wrinkled. Obviously, he didn't see any fatal flaw in Hiriko's ritual. Hyojin didn't keep Danzo in suspense, and directly explained, just fusing the 5 basic attributes of fire, water, earth, wind, and lightning chakra is actually not a good choice. It is necessary to add yin chakra and yang chakra, and gather all 7 attributes of chakra, in order to truly increase the success rate of the ritual and completely fuse the Kekitsu limit fusion ritual. I just said that Hiriko survived the Kekitsa limit fusion ritual with good luck, because among the 5 Kekitsa limit fusion ritual, the Uchiha clan with the Sharingan not only represents fire chakra, but also yin chakra. Among them, the Uzumaki clan with the Hakushin limit fusion ritual not only represents wind chakra, but also yang chakra. Although Hiriko only chose a 5 Kekitsu limit fusion ritual, in fact, he accidentally gathered all 7 attributes of chakra, and this is the key to his success. Chapter 545. This is the first time Danzo heard of such a theory. Not to mention him, even Orochimaru and the chief research officer of Roots were frowning and lost in thought. Whether it is Orochimaru or the chief research officer of Roots, limited by their own vision, they did not pay enough attention to the importance of completing the attribute chakra. They also did not understand the role of yin-yang release in the Kekii Genkai fusion ceremony, so they did not discover the fatal flaw in the Kekii Genkai fusion ceremony. After listening to Hyojin's explanation, they were shocked and realized their previous negligence. Only now did Orochimaru put away the calm expression on his face. His snake-like eyes swept toward Hyojin and secretly thought, I didn't expect that Amatsukumi's research on the Chimera Cure technique has reached such a deep level. In the field of scientific research, Orochimaru has never admired anyone, but the theory proposed by Hyojin has convinced him. At the same time, it also made him more vigilant against Amatsukumi. Knock, knock. Danzo broke the brief silence in the conference room and asked Hyojin, You said that this old man has an advantage in this aspect. Do you mean that this old man already has the yin and yang attribute chakra and chakra in my body, so I don't need to worry about completing the 2 chakra attributes? Hyojin nodded. Danzo's brows relaxed and said with a slightly lighter tone, In that case, what else is there to worry about? It's not that simple. Shaking his head, Hyojin explained, I have said before, your body is a bit special. Although you have transplanted the cells of Sharingan and Naruto, the method is too rough, leaving a lot of hidden dangers. Humph, instead of saying it's a fusion, it's better to say that these 2 forces are temporarily residing in your body. I think you know this better than me. As he spoke, Hyojin's gaze landed on Danzo's right arm. Due to the limitations of the previous technique, the Danzo's technique was considered the most basic and unstable fusion of limbs. Danzo's right arm that is filled with Sharingan doesn't even belong to him, and the way he transplanted the Hashirama cells is also very crude. Instead of transplanting the cells at the cellular level, he directly transplanted the flesh and blood of the Hashirama cells into Danzo's body. Just like his right arm, it's also a kind of limb fusion. And among all the fusion methods, the gene fusion is the most thorough. Although the failure rate is extremely high, once it succeeds, it will be very stable. For example, Hyojin first fused with all the recessive genes of the Hyuga clan, and with his own weak physique, he forcibly opened the Tenseigan without any signs of rejection or rampage. Cell fusion is second, but after it succeeds, it will also tend to stabilize. The Hashirama cells that Hyojin performed on Jishue's body is a typical fusion at the cellular level. Limb fusion can be said to be the most basic and the most unstable. Even if Danzo succeeds by a fluke, the body will always be under the threat of rejection and rampage. This can be seen from the battle between Danzo and Sasuke in the original space. In that battle, because of chakra, Danzo consumed too much energy, causing the balance between the yin and yang release in his body to be broken, and the flesh and blood that was implanted in his body instantly went berserk, almost turning him into a tree without a will. How dare you? Hearing Sejin's impolite evaluation of his transplantation, Danzo's face was gloomy and gloomy as he was exposed. But at the same time, because of Hyojin's frankness, in the depths of his heart, Danzo actually has a little more trust in this Homisuk of Amitsukami, who has a sharp tongue. Hyojin didn't care about the Danzo, who was embarrassed in anger, and still said coldly, "Considering that there are too many flesh and limbs in your body, especially the flesh and blood of Naruto, when choosing the bloodline limit that represents the earth and water attribute, the bloodline limit that represents the two attributes of chakra must be slightly weaker. At the same time, you need to find out the main attribute of the original owner of your right arm, and only then can you ensure the balance of all the attributes of chakra." Regarding this key issue, Hyojin didn't hide anything and told Danzo everything he knew. Because Danzo had both manpower and financial resources, as well as the courage to carry out a bold and decisive transformation of his own body, it was rare in the entire shinobi world. Therefore, Hyojin had to maximize the value of Danzo's pathfinding ability, and let Danzo explore the rugged road leading to the bloodline net. After experiencing the initial shock, Orochimaru also slowly recovered from his shock. He was keenly aware of Hyojin's thoughts, and guessed that Amitsukami didn't hide anything from Danzo. Most likely, they're using Danzo as a guinea pig, just like him. Therefore, a playful smile appeared on his face again, and he said to Danzo, "I can use my technique to carry out a comprehensive examination and transformation of your body, so that your body can become more stable before the ceremony." Orochimaru can be said to be the best in the shinobi world in terms of human body transformation. Taking Orochimaru as an example, his body has almost been transformed to the point that there are no vital points, and coupled with his unique Orochimaru style substitution technique, it is almost impossible to kill him with ordinary taijutsu and ninjutsu. But Orochimaru's attitude and tone when he spoke were too playful, especially with his snake-like vertical pupils. It gave people the feeling that the word conspiracy was written on his face. Kuroto furrowed his brows and glared at Orochimaru fiercely, using his eyes to convey a message to Orochimaru. "Hey, why are you using Danzo as a lab rat, acting so blatantly?" Orochimaru smiled and looked back at Hyojin, as if saying, "Don't worry. Even if Danzo knows that we are using him as a guinea pig, he won't refuse." Looking at Hyojin and Orochimaru's eyes, Danzo's face sank. Just as Orochimaru expected, Danzo may not be clear about Amitsukami and Orochimaru's intentions, but he has a rough idea of it. But he doesn't care. As long as he can obtain supreme power and reach the peak of power, he doesn't mind being used by Amitsukami and Orochimaru. Moreover, in his eyes, whether Amitsukami and Orochimaru are using his power and body for experiments, or whether he is using the technology provided by Amitsukami and Orochimaru to achieve his own goals, based on the current situation, no one can say for sure. Everything can only be decided by time. Chapter 546. After everyone had spoken, Danzo didn't bother hiding anything, and directly told everyone about the bloodline limit that he had in mind. Of the bloodline limit boundaries that he was interested in, there were two bloodline limit boundaries that Hiriko had his eyes on: Hell Release and Swift Release. Underworld Evasion and Swift Evasion were both extremely functional bloodline boundary. Once you have Nether Release, you can basically be immune to most ninjutsu damage, and after you have Rapid Release, you have the ability to avoid most physical damage. If you only have one of them, the effect may not be too obvious, but if you have both at the same time, then your survivability will be greatly improved. Hiriko is a good example. Apart from the Underworld Release and Swift Release, Danzo also proposed a bloodline limit that surprised Hyojin. That was the Crystal Release. Crystal Release is a relatively rare Kekkei Genkai in the shinobi world. Not only does it have both offensive and defensive capabilities, but it also has the ability to control a large area of effect. Coupled with the fact that it can create a mirror that uses the refraction of light to block the vision of a pupillary Kekkei ninja, preventing the pupillary Kekkei ninja from using their line of sight to cast Genjutsu. It has an obvious restraining effect on Sharingan, Byakugan, and other such pupillary Kekkei ninjas. He actually chose the Crystal Release. Does he think that Jutsu Kekkei is an imaginary enemy? Under the mask of the flame pattern, Kuroto thought calmly. On the other side, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes. He is the one who knows the most about Crystal Release, because one of his subordinates is a Kekkei Genkai ninja who possesses Crystal Release. At this time, Danzo said, among the 3 bloodline limit boundaries that this old man chose, Nether Release represents the Water Attribute Chakra, Swift Release represents the Wind Attribute Chakra, and Crystal Release represents the Earth Attribute Chakra. As for the remaining 2 bloodline limit boundaries that represent the Fire Attribute Chakra and the Thunder Attribute Chakra, this old man hasn't decided yet. Do you have any suggestions? Hyojin said bluntly, there is no need to worry about the Thunder Attribute. Mist Release is the most versatile bloodline limit boundary. Hiriko's talent in ninjutsu is very poor. Even after fusing 5 bloodline limit boundaries through the Kekkei Genkai and completed the transformation, there are still obvious flaws in using ninjutsu, so he couldn't display the true power of the Mist Release. In other words, in the current shinobi world, there is no one who can display the true power of the Mist Release. Because Mist Release is a bloodline limit boundary that has a very high upper limit, and at the same time, it is extremely difficult to use. Not only does it require the caster to have a huge amount of chakras amount, but it also requires the caster to have extremely fine chakra control, and only a handful of people in the entire shinobi world possess both of these points. Therefore, so far, there has never been such an excellent talent among the shinobi who can use the Mist Release. Orochimaru also put forward his own opinion. In the case of considering Crystal Release, Boil Release may be a good choice among the Fire Attribute bloodline limit boundary. With the Crystal Release, Danzo can easily create a sealed space. So, in a sealed space, the Boiling Release, which can exert the greatest power, is undoubtedly the best combination. After thinking for a moment, Danzo nodded and said, yes, Mist Release and Boil Release are indeed the best choice. As if thinking of something, Orochimaru added, but in this way, there will be a problem with the balance of the various attributes. Boil Release has the main fire attribute and the secondary water attribute, while Mist Release, proposed by Hyojin, has the main thunder attribute and the secondary water attribute. In addition, the Wood Release that was implanted in Danzo's body has the main earth attribute and the secondary water attribute. In this way, Danzo's bloodline limit boundary, in addition to Hell Release, which is the main water attribute, there are also Boil Release, Mist Release, and Wood Release, which are the 3 secondary water attribute bloodline limit boundary. The proportion of the water attribute is far higher than the other chakra attributes, breaking the balance. Danzo said, this old man is very satisfied with these bloodline limit boundary, and I don't want to change them. Is there any other way to solve the problem of the imbalance of the attributes? Hyojin pondered for a moment and said, then we can only start with the fusion ceremony. We can choose the location of the ceremony to be near the lava and use the power of the environment to suppress the excessive water attribute of chakra. Orochimaru smiled sinisterly. We can also choose a weaker ninja with Hell Release to further weaken the proportion of the water attribute. For example, we can find a child with Hell Release. Inside Orochimaru's base, Naruto, who had finished his training for the day, took the opportunity to ask Medicine Master Do, Brother Do, why is Orochimaru, Sensei, ignoring me? Did I do something to make him angry? Naruto may seem careless, but in fact, he is very sensitive. He can easily feel who is good to him and who is bad to him, so he can perceive the change in Orochimaru's attitude towards him. Do shook his head. Orochimaru, Sama is not angry with you. He is just a little bit strict. After defecting, Orochimaru took in a lot of war orphans, but those who can really interest Orochimaru are only outstanding children like Kimimaro and Haku. As for the other children with mediocre qualifications, they're all regarded as tools that can be discarded at will by Orochimaru, and he doesn't give them any feelings beyond that of tools. This is Orochimaru, a ninja with indifference as his instinct. Only geniuses can make him favor them, and he is willing to spend time and energy to train them. Naruto lowered his head and muttered, "Did I disappoint him?" Do didn't answer, just sighed softly. As the child of 4 generations Naruto and the previous 9 Tails Jinchuriki, Naruto will naturally have high expectations, which is inevitable. Naruto, on the other hand, is not a talented ninja. At least at this stage, he has not shown any extraordinary talent. So the higher the expectations of him, the greater the gap, and Orochimaru has no patience for mediocre people. Ding, ding, ding. Suddenly, the alarm in the cave rang. Do stood up, pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and wondered who touched the alarm. After making a hand seal, Do carefully sensed for a while and immediately frowned. Through perceptual ninjutsu, he found 4 powerful chakra in the distance, rushing towards the cave. Is it Akatsuki? I didn't expect them to find this place. After a pause, Do moved his eyes to the depths of the cave and thought, it seems that I can only take the risk and hide in that place. Chapter 547. Drip, drip. The sound of water droplets falling from the stalactites at the top of the cave echoed continuously in the dark and silent cave. Walking in the cave, Naruto looked around and found that the fog in the cave was getting thicker and the visibility was getting lower and lower. Things beyond 1 or 2 meters could not be seen clearly. Hinata timidly followed behind Naruto, his hand still clutching Naruto's sleeve tightly. His delicate little face was full of a nervous expression for fear of being separated from Naruto. Naruto turned his head and smiled at Hinata. It's okay. I'm here. Yeah. Hinata nodded heavily. After walking in the cave for a long time, Naruto, who could not help but ask the pharmacist Do, who had been leading the way, Brother Do, where are we going? Do pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose, to a place where we can hide from the enemy. Through the previous perceptive ninjutsu, Do found that the elite ninjas approaching the secret base, Chakra's amount were all elite Jonin level. So he immediately dismissed the idea of a head-on confrontation and directly took Naruto and Hinata to hide in the depths of the cave. The reason why Orochimaru opened a secret base in this cave and placed the important hostage, the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, here is not only because of the remote location of this cave, but also because this cave is connected to a secret realm that exists between reality and illusion, which is a natural refuge that can be used to avoid powerful enemies. Do had long been interested in everything in the depths of the cave, but without Orochimaru's permission, he did not dare to act rashly. This time, the attack of foreign enemies gave him a reason to enter the depths of the cave to take refuge. So he did not hesitate to take Naruto and Hinata to the depths of the cave. Not long after, the fog in the cave was so thick that it was hard to see clearly even if you were only separated by a body. Several people in it were completely surrounded by the thick fog, and Naruto and Hinata completely lost their sense of direction. Big Brother Do, how much longer do we have to walk? At this time, Naruto couldn't help but grab the sleeve of the front pocket like Hinata did. Do's expression was calm as he smiled. We'll be there soon, Naruto whispered. You said the same thing just now, but it's been so long and they still haven't arrived. Do turned around and glanced at Naruto. A glint flashed in her eyes, but it was quickly restrained. She smiled and asked, Naruto, do you know why you can't learn the doppelganger technique? Naruto had always been concerned about this question and hurriedly asked why. Do said, because you're the son of a fox demon, you can't use chakra like a normal person. Do, who had reached the level of Jonin and was proficient in medical ninjutsu, naturally saw that the 9 tails in Naruto's body was the culprit that interfered with Naruto's normal performance of ninjutsu. Naruto's expression fell again, and he pouted and said, Then I'll never be able to learn the doppelganger technique. Do seemed to be thinking about something, and said slowly, In fact, in addition to using chakra, there's another way to perform ninjutsu. That is, what is it? Big Brother Do, tell me quickly. As soon as he heard that there was another way to learn ninjutsu, Naruto suddenly became spirited. Looking at the depths of the fog, a strange smile appeared on his face. That's the immortal technique. Immortal technique? Naruto was slightly stunned. In the village, he had never heard of this word. Even Sasuke, who always said some strange words, had never mentioned it. As long as you learn the immortal technique, you can absorb the natural energy outside your body. Then even if you can't use the chakra in your body, you can still become an excellent ninja, and it's not impossible to become Naruto. Do chuckled, and the corners of his mouth were also raised higher and higher. Because of Yugo, Orochimaru's research on natural energy had been very in-depth, and the cursed seal was the result of this research. However, because Orochimaru had used the forbidden technique undead reincarnation and changed his body, there was a certain problem with his physique, so there was some kind of obstacle in practicing the immortal technique. In addition, practicing the immortal technique was very risky. Even the talented Orochimaru did not have full confidence. So in the field of immortal technique, Orochimaru fell into a dead end. Do was a person who lost himself, so he hoped to learn the immortal technique so that he could become a reference for Orochimaru to learn the immortal technique. Therefore, his fascination with the immortal technique grew day by day, and it was difficult to control. Listening to Do's narration, Naruto suddenly became distracted. In his mind, he imagined that after he became Naruto, Sasuke would be respectful to him, and the villagers would cheer and praise him. As he thought about it, saliva unconsciously flowed from the corners of his mouth. Do, who was still waiting for Naruto to clamor about learning the immortal technique, saw that Naruto behind him did not say anything for a long time. He became suspicious and quickly looked back, just in time to see Naruto daydreaming with saliva dripping from his mouth. Do's face suddenly darkened, and he sneered, What a heartless little fellow. Is it really useful to let him try to practice the immortal technique first? At this time, Naruto also came back to his senses and muttered, Brother Do, I want to learn the immortal technique. Quickly teach me the immortal technique. Do shook his head. I'm sorry, I don't know the immortal technique. Naruto was disappointed and asked again, Then who can teach me the immortal technique? Sensei Orochimaru? Do shook his head again. Lord Orochimaru doesn't know the immortal technique either. Naruto was taken aback. Even a ninja as powerful as Sensei Orochimaru doesn't know the immortal technique? In the ninja world, there are very few ninjas who have mastered the immortal technique. I'm afraid no one can guide you. After a slight pause, Do looked at a towering cave door that was faintly visible in the fog in front of him, and said with a yearning face, But I know where I can practice the immortal technique. Where can I practice the immortal technique? Naruto's eyes widened, and he asked doubtfully. There was no doubt that Do had successfully aroused his interest in the immortal technique. Do, who had been moving forward in the fog, suddenly stopped. Naruto, who was following closely behind, bumped into Do, then rubbed his head and complained, Brother Do, why did you suddenly stop? Do looked at the cave door in front of him, lost in thought, and murmured, We're here. Naruto poked his head out from behind Do, looked at the simple and towering cave door in front of him, and asked, Hey, what is this place? Hinata, who was holding Naruto's sleeve, recognized the 3 big words above the cave door, and said softly, Ryuchi Cave. Ryuchi Cave? Naruto scratched his head and asked, What kind of place is Ryuchi Cave? Why do people live in such a remote cave? It's really strange. Do smiled. This is the place where you can learn the immortal technique. And when did I say that people live here are human? Chapter 548. Naruto held the back of his head with both hands and muttered, "Brother Dodo is scaring people again. There is obviously a house here. If it's not people living here, what else can it be?" Dodo smiled and didn't say anything more. He walked directly towards the gate of the Ryuchi cave. Naruto followed behind casually and asked, "Brother Dodo, can I really learn immortal arts here? Is it difficult to learn immortal arts? Can I learn it?" Naruto's shouts behind him made Dodo's nervous mood ease a lot. In fact, Dodo's heart was not as calm as he looked on the surface. When he saw the words Ryuchi Cave, he was even more nervous than Naruto because he knew better than the ignorant Naruto what these words meant. Ryuchi Cave, this was a forbidden place that even Orochimaru didn't dare to set foot in. Stepping on the wide steps, the three of them walked step by step towards the gate of the Ryuchi Cave. Compared to the majestic cave gate, the three of them were as small as ants. When passing through the cave gate, Naruto couldn't help but exclaim, "What a big gate!" Hinata was also surprised. Even as the eldest daughter of the Hyuga clan, she had never seen such a magnificent cave gate. It didn't look like a building that served humans. After passing through the cave gate, the three of them passed through a long passage and climbed hundreds of steps before finally arriving in front of a stone bed. On the stone bed was an old woman in a white robe. She squinted her eyes and looked at Dodo, Naruto, and Hinata. She immediately smiled and said, "Confused people, what is your purpose of coming here?" Dodo took a step forward, bowed respectfully, and asked, "May I ask if you are the White Snake Sage?" The old woman on the stone bed smiled and nodded. At this time, Naruto went directly in front of the White Snake Sage. He stared at the White Snake Sage and asked, "Grandma, are you really a sage? Can you teach me immortal arts?" White Snake Immortal narrowed his eyes and said, "If you want to learn immortal techniques, you have to pass my test first." Do pulled back Naruto, who had come forward, and politely asked the White Snake Immortal, "May I ask what kind of test it is?" Although the White Snake Immortal in front of him had the appearance of a kind old granny, Do knew her true colors very well. She was a monster who had mastered immortal techniques and had lived for an unknown period of time. Therefore, Do didn't dare to be disrespectful to her. In the depths of the Dragon Pit Cave, there's a big snake called Exainya. It has a bad temper and gives me a headache. As long as you can help me remove its reverse scale and make it behave, you'll pass my test. The White Snake Immortal spoke slowly, her narrowed eyes constantly scanning Naruto, as if Naruto was hiding something that fascinated her. Naruto curled his lips. "Isn't it just defeating a snake? It doesn't sound that difficult." "Don't talk nonsense, Naruto." Do wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, then said to the White Snake Immortal, "A big snake that even you have a headache. I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to deal with." "Huh." The White Snake Immortal smiled and said, "If you want to learn immortal techniques, you have to pass this test first." Do didn't have the guts to bargain with the White Snake Immortal. Moreover, before he stepped into the Dragon Pit Cave, he had already expected that the process of learning immortal techniques would not be so smooth. However, the test of the White Snake Immortal really made him feel embarrassed. No one knew better than Do about the attitude of the thousand snakes towards Orochimaru in the Dragon Pit Cave. If what the White Snake Immortal said was true, that the big snake named Exainya could give the White Snake Immortal a headache, then the other party was most likely a big snake at the same level as the thousand snakes. This was not something that a ninja of his level could deal with. At least, he needed to have the strength of Orochimaru to take the risk. Just as Do was weighing whether to accept the test of the White Snake Immortal, Naruto had already asked the White Snake Immortal the way to Exainya's lair and swaggered away. In the eyes of little Naruto, how powerful could a snake that gave the old woman a headache be? He had caught snakes and fish many times in the village. Seeing this, Hinata didn't hesitate and immediately followed after them. When Do came back to his senses, Naruto and Hinata had already gone far away. He shook his head and sighed, then quickly caught up with them. For some reason, he suddenly felt that it was not a good idea to bring the insensitive Naruto into the Dragon Pit Cave. After Naruto and the others left the hall, three graceful figures landed beside the white snake immortal. They were the three beauties who were responsible for serving the white snake immortal, Shida Shinheim, Ikaiba and Kanjinheim. At this time, Kanjinheim asked the white snake immortal, "Why didn't you let us test them outside the dragon pit cave like before?" The white snake immortal stared at the figure of Naruto and said with a smile, "I didn't expect this child to find me first." Shida Shinheim asked curiously, "Is there anything special about that child?" The white snake immortal replied, "You will know in the future." Ikaiba was a little puzzled. "Since that child is special, why did you let them deal with Exainya? If they go like this, they will definitely die in Exainya's hands." The white snake immortal smiled and did not say anything. After passing through the caves, Naruto and the others finally came to a huge cave. "The cave that Granny mentioned should be here, right?" As Naruto spoke, he ran to the edge of the cave and turned over the stones on the ground. Hinata asked in a low voice, "Naruto, why are you turning over these stones?" "Haha, you don't know, but snakes like to hide under these stones. When I was in the village, I caught snakes like this." After smiling proudly, Naruto said, "Hinata, don't you have the Byakugan? Help me find it." Hinata nodded hurriedly. Then, she made a hand seal and shouted, "Byakugan, open." After activating the Byakugan, Hinata was about to carefully examine the cave. Suddenly, a huge chakra mass rushed in her eyes, scaring her so much that her legs went soft and she fell to the ground. Naruto asked curiously, "Hinata, what's wrong with you?" Hinata, who fell to the ground, pointed behind Naruto and stammered, "Ming, Naruto, behind you, behind you." Naruto touched the smooth rock wall behind him and asked, "What's wrong? Isn't it just a wall? Look at how scared you are. What's so strange about a wall?" Rumble. As soon as Naruto's voice fell, the smooth wall that he touched started to move, even causing the whole cave to tremble. Then, a huge orange vertical eye appeared in front of Naruto. Naruto was so shocked that he opened his mouth. What is this?" Mobile version of the fastest updated website. Chapter 549. It's a new month again. As usual, I'm asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. I hope that the students who have guaranteed monthly votes can support me. Everyone here is my bread and butter. If you have the ability, please support me by subscribing to the official website. I would like to thank all of you here. The world of Naruto in the eyes of reincarnation. I wish everyone a happy June 1st. Currently typing. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 550. Staring blankly at the orange pupil that was bigger than him, Naruto could not help but be dumbfounded. Swoosh, accompanied by the sound of wind breaking, Daodu, who was in the distance, activated the teleportation technique and hugged Naruto and Hinata from both sides, saving them from the snake's mouth and retreating to the other end of the cave. Oh no! After putting down Naruto and Hinata in his arms, Daodu's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. When he saw the huge snake named Shinya with his own eyes and saw its size clearly, Duba no longer had the slightest bit of fluke in his heart. Without a doubt, this Shinya was just as he had expected. It was indeed a summoning beast on the same level as Manda. It was a powerful summoning beast that could only be tamed by a ninja on the same level as Orochimaru. "How dare you break into my territory? You got some guts." Exainya raised his head, his single vertical pupil staring at Naruto and the others, the huge tongue in his mouth swaying up and down. After dispelling his wishful thinking, Daodu decisively gave up on the test of seizing Exainya's reverse scale. His gaze swept across the cave passageway that they came from. However, Daodu, who was proficient in camouflage, did not reveal his intentions in terms of expression, but the desire to fight on his body revealed his thoughts. As a snake, Exainya was the most sensitive to this. He did not need to judge Daodu's expression to sense that the adult ninja in front of him had no desire to fight at all and only wanted to escape. Oof. With a heavy snort, Exainia opened his mouth and spat out a black ash-like substance towards the exit of the cave. Hua hua hua. In an instant, the entrance of the cave turned into a rock wall. After sealing the entrance, Exainia flipped his huge body and said, "I haven't tasted the taste of a ninja for a long time. Since you've sent yourselves to my doorstep, it's just the right time for me to satisfy my craving." Seeing that the escape entrance had been sealed by Exainia, Daodu's heart sank. He did not care much and quickly formed a seal with both hands, shouting, "Water release, water dragon bullet technique." In an instant, a huge water dragon appeared out of thin air and pounced towards Exainia. Rumble. Under the attack of water dragon bullet jutsu, Exainia was hit on the rock wall. Shaking the cave, the water dragon formed by ninjutsu also exploded. Damn it! In the splashing water, Exainia was completely enraged. His body swayed, and his huge snake tail swept towards Daodu like a whirlwind. Bang, like a fly hit by a fly swatter, Daodu was instantly shot out and hit the rock wall heavily, making a low muffled sound. Cough, cough. Soon, Do got up from the ground while coughing up blood. The wounds on his body and the obvious fractures on his ribs were rapidly recovering in a puff of green smoke. Naruto and Hinata quickly ran over and asked, "Brother Do, are you okay?" Do shook his head with a dignified expression. With his medical ninjutsu attainments, this degree of injury would not kill him, but at the same time, he also understood that his own chakra would eventually be exhausted. If he did not think of a way to escape as soon as possible, the final result would be to die in the snake's mouth. In the blink of an eye, Do came up with the only way to escape, and that was to summon 1,000 snakes. But unlike Orochimaru, although Duru also has the ability to summon 1,000 snakes, there is no guarantee of success rate. Whether he succeeds or not depends entirely on the mood of Snake Dowager at the time. Only when Snake Dowager is in a good mood will he be able to summon her successfully. Unfortunately, Snake Dowager is short-tempered and rarely has a good mood. I can only bet on it. Biting his finger, Do did not care about his own chakra and desperately pressed it to the ground. Bang! A huge plume of white smoke rose up and almost filled the entire cave. At the same time, Do and Naruto and Hinata beside him suddenly rose, as if there was a huge object under their feet lifting them up. "Who is summoning me?" Without waiting for them to recover, a rough roar echoed in the cave. Then, a huge purple figure appeared from the white smoke, causing the originally spacious and huge cave to seem slightly crowded. Success. Do let out a long sigh of relief and immediately spoke politely to 1,000 snakes. "Lord 1,000 snakes, it is I who summoned you. Please help me escape from here." 1,000 snakes' vertical pupils rolled up, glancing at Do's head, and coldly snorted, "Humph, so it is Orochimaru's subordinate. They dare summon me? Do you want to be swallowed into my stomach?" Do said helplessly, "Lord 1,000 snakes, please rest assured. After this, I will definitely prepare a satisfactory offering for you." 1,000 snakes shifted his gaze to Exainia. "Oh, so it is Exainia." Exainia did not expect Do to summon 1,000 snakes, and said with some fear, "1,000 snakes, it was these humans who trespassed into my territory first. Are you trying to hinder me?" 1,000 snakes said to Do, "Hey kid, don't forget about the offering you promised me." With a bang, the Snake Dowager turned into a puff of white smoke and disappeared from the cave. Just like Exainia was afraid of 1,000 snakes, 1,000 snakes, who is known as the strongest snake in the Dragon Pit Cave, was also afraid of Exainia. Therefore, she had no intention of fighting with Exainia for a small fry like Do. Following 1,000 snakes' departure, Do fell to the ground with a sluggish expression. He hadn't expected that the Snake Dowager would run off so confidently. She didn't even forget to remind him about the sacrificial offerings before she left. "Exainia's won," I stared at Do, his heart boiling with anger. Oh no. Do was completely at his wit's end. The summon just now had used up a large amount of his chakra, but not only did it not have any effect, it even angered Exainia. Instantly, Exainya moved. He was like a dark red rolling rock, fiercely pouncing towards Do and the others. But just as Exainya was about to touch them, a dense fog suddenly surged out from Naruto's body. Exainya immediately stopped in his tracks, as if he had become sluggish, and froze on the spot. The moment the fog surged out, Naruto also froze, as if he had lost his soul. Sensing the dense natural energy on Naruto's body, Do was shocked. In fact, even Do himself did not know that he possessed the special talent of controlling natural energy. It was this rare talent that allowed him to sense the change in Naruto's aura so keenly. Suppressing the bewilderment in his heart, Do sized up Naruto and Exainya, who were both in a daze. He secretly thought to himself, why does Naruto's body have such dense natural energy? Could it be that the White Snake Immortal did something to his body? But why would the White Snake Immortal do something to Naruto's body? Chapter 551. In Exaianya's gloomy spiritual world, Naruto was still sitting on the ground in a sorry state. He raised his head and stared blankly at the image that appeared in the sky. This image was like a real scene, and Naruto was like a bystander who was there. In the image, Exaianya and a powerful ninja with dark blue hair, wearing a long robe of the Wind Nation, were fighting side by side in the desert, resisting the enemies that were constantly pouring in from all directions. Although the combination of the two was incomparably powerful and defeated many enemies, more and more enemies were surrounding them. The situation was already collapsing. The ninja fighting side by side with Exaianya immediately gave the order to retreat. However, Exaianya, who was still full of fighting spirit, was not willing to retreat. He disobeyed the ninja's order to retreat and once again attacked the enemy group. And at this moment, an attack from behind hit Exaianya's right eye. Exaianya turned his head in horror and found that the one who sneak attacked him was his comrade who was fighting side by side with him. What? In shock and anger, Exaianya slowly fell to the ground. The last scene that was reflected in Exaianya's left eye was that ninja's indifferent and alienated gaze. It was a gaze that could pierce the soul and penetrate the bone. After watching the image, Naruto slowly stood up. Exaianya, is this your experience? So that's why you went blind in that eye. Little devil, who allowed you to enter my heart without permission. Exaianya's angry voice came from all directions. That aggressive posture, it was as if he wanted to swallow Naruto in one bite. Naruto looked straight at Exaianya's huge orange pupil and said, although I have never been betrayed by my comrade, I understand the feeling of loneliness. Exaianya, you must also be very lonely, right? For some reason, after seeing Exaianya's experience, Naruto's fear of Exaianya suddenly disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a strong sense of sympathy. Looking at Naruto's sincere eyes, Exaianya was startled for a moment. Then he immediately became angry and shouted, little devil, what kind of eyes are you looking at me like that? I really enjoy being lonely. Naruto said to himself, I'm the child of the fox demon. I grew up without parents, so I know the feeling of loneliness better than anyone else. It's a terrible feeling. Oof. Exaianya snorted heavily. Although his expression was still ferocious, he could not help but calm down and listen to Naruto's narration. Naruto continued, later on, I made friends. I got to know Sasuke, Hinata, and Ningxi. I understood that only by being with my companions can I walk out of loneliness. Partner, Exaianya coldly said, little demon, you are too naive. The meaning of companions' existence is betrayal. They will betray you when you trust them the most. Naruto shouted, although I don't know why your partner did that, I will never betray my companions. Never. Exaianya moved his huge snake head in front of Naruto. His forked tongue was even closer to Naruto's face. In a low, muffled voice, he said, you are just a little demon who doesn't know anything. Those two people outside are your companions, right? I will give you a choice right now. Either let me eat you and let them go, or let me eat them and let you go. Which one will you choose? Looking at his own figure reflected in Exaenya's single eye, Naruto took a deep breath and said, "Big brother Do and little sister Hinata are in danger because of me. It's all my fault. I didn't know you were such a big snake. So please let them go. If you want to eat them, eat me." Exaenya coldly said, "We better think carefully. I will really eat people." Naruto summoned up his courage and shouted, "Eat me." With Naruto's shout, the surrounding fog quickly receded. In an instant, Naruto and Exaenya both left the spiritual world and returned to the cave. At this time, Exaenya raised his head high. "Have you really decided?" Naruto climbed up from the ground, step by step walked towards Exaenya. Mouth said, "Yes, Exaenya, I want you to understand. Even if I die, I will not betray my companions." On the side, Dote did not know what the two had experienced in the spiritual world. He saw Naruto walking towards the aggressive big snake, Exaenya, suddenly shocked. "Naruto, come back." Naruto turned back and said, "Big brother Do, I want to persuade it." Do sternly scolded, "Idiot, how can this monster be persuaded with a few words? Come back, don't die in vain." At this time, Do was completely speechless about Naruto. Before, he had always thought that Naruto was just a little careless. In the standards of Orochimaru, he may be regarded as an idiot, but in the standards of ordinary people, Naruto was actually not so bad. On the contrary, Naruto was quite talented in some aspects. But today, he realized that he was wrong. Naruto was indeed a complete idiot. He would even use his mouth to persuade a monster like Exaenya. This was no different from courting death. Forget it. Let him be. Once he is in danger, the Nine Tails' body will probably go berserk immediately. Then I will take advantage of the Nine Tails and Exaenya to escape from here with the eldest daughter of the Hyuga family. Do adjusted the frame of the glasses on the bridge of his nose, thinking about his own little plan. From Do's point of view, this time Naruto was bound to die. At this time, instead of worrying about Naruto's life and death, and missing the opportunity to escape, it was better to make use of Naruto's death. Immediately, Do lifted Hinata, who was next to him, waiting for Exaenya to swallow Naruto in one bite. On the other side, Exaenya looked at Naruto, who had a fearless look on his face. His heart was touched, but he was also angry at being underestimated. Therefore, he opened his mouth and roared, "Do you think I don't dare to eat you? Well, since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish." At this time, Naruto stretched out his right hand to Exaenya and said, "Exaenya, I want to be friends with you." Hearing Naruto's words, Do, in the distance, was speechless, thinking, "This idiot, I should not have brought him into the Dragon Pit Cave, Sai. I really don't know how to explain this to Lord Orochimaru." Hinata, who was held in Do's hand, looked at Naruto with starry eyes. Looking at Naruto, who dared to face the giant snake alone, his face full of admiration. Just when Do thought that Exaenya, who had opened his bloody mouth, would swallow Naruto in one bite, Exaenya actually closed his mouth and snorted heavily. "Humph, it is not that easy to be friends with me." Do, who was ready to break out of the cave, suddenly staggered and almost fell to the ground. Then he looked at Exaenya with a dull face. Chapter 552. Sitting cross-legged on top of Exaenya's head, Do's expression was stiff and his eyes were still somewhat dull. Just now, he had witnessed the whole process of Naruto persuading Exaenya and signing a psychic contract with him. Therefore, he was still in a trance until now. On the side, Naruto said loudly, "Exaenya, you have to promise me that you won't eat people in the future." Exaenya replied in a muffled voice, "Naruto, are you an idiot? In this kind of place, where can I find people to eat?" Naruto scratched his head and said, "So you were lying to me when you told me that you ate people every day." "Oof." Exaenya snorted disdainfully. Listening to the conversation between Naruto and Exaenya, the corner of Do's mouth slightly trembled. In his impression, even an expert like Orochimaru couldn't get along with the snake dowager so harmoniously. "I must have fallen into an illusion." Do shook his head, feeling certain in his heart. However, after trying several seals that could dispel the illusion, there was no effect at all. At the same time, he also found that he could freely use ninjutsu, and the operation of the chakra in his body didn't show any signs of interference. Could it be? All of this is real. Soon, under Xenya's lead, they returned to the temple where the white snake immortal was. Looking at Naruto, who was sitting on top of Xenya's head, the white snake immortal smiled and said, "It seems that you have defeated Xenya and passed the test." Naruto quickly replied, "Granny, you misunderstood. We didn't defeat Xenya. We just became friends." Oof. Xenya snorted again and turned his huge head to the side. Hee. After a few strange laughs, the white snake immortal's gaze swept over Naruto and said, "So, you have passed the test. So, which one of you wants to practice the immortal technique?" Me. Naruto couldn't wait to raise his hand. His interest in immortal technique had long been aroused by Do. Hinata lowered his head. Although she was not very interested in immortal arts, she really wanted to cultivate with Naruto. However, as the eldest daughter of the Hyuga clan, the clan had strict rules on what to cultivate and how to cultivate. It was not something that she could do as she pleased. Do pushed the frame of the glasses on the bridge of her nose, and a light flashed in her eyes, but it quickly disappeared without a trace. This time, he entered the Ryuchi cave under the pretext of avoiding a strong enemy. He did have the intention to peek into the mysteries of the celestial arts. However, he was not the same person who had lost his life goal after the death of Orochimaru. Naturally, he did not have the courage and determination to cut off all means of retreat. Moreover, before entering the Lanchi cave, he had already secretly decided to use the insensitive Naruto as a guinea pig to test out the depth of the immortal technique. Therefore, Do politely bowed to the white snake immortal and said, "I'm sorry, I haven't made up my mind yet." The white snake immortal waved his hand indifferently. Then he focused all his attention on Naruto and said with a smile, "Ishigashima will guide you in cultivating our Ryuchi cave's immortal technique." Swish! As soon as the white snake immortal's voice fell, a figure landed beside Naruto and led Naruto to the depths of the temple. Looking at Naruto being led away by Ishigashima, Do suddenly felt that something was wrong with this trip to the Ryuchi cave. He had a vague illusion that they were not begging the white snake immortal to teach them the immortal technique, but the white snake immortal was taking the initiative to teach Naruto the immortal technique of the Ryuchi cave. Maybe I'm too nervous. Do quickly shook his head and dispelled this absurd idea. Inside the Akatsuki's base. Not bad. Keep this pace. Sharingan, pay attention to the changes in my muscles. Idiot, in this situation, using the great fireball technique is just a waste of chakra. The release of ninjutsu needs to be coordinated with the corresponding tactics. Releasing ninjutsu in a hurry without the corresponding tactics will only expose your own flaws to the enemy. On the training ground, Shinichi was defending against Sasuke's attacks while giving instructions to Sasuke in a strict tone. On the field, Sasuke did not argue at all. He followed Shinichi's instructions methodically. Even if he was tired and sweating all over, even if he was beaten black and blue, he did not complain at all. Since the last actual combat training with Shinichi, Sasuke knew that the actual combat training with his brother Itachi and Jishue at home was all child's play. After understanding this, Sasuke's face turned red. He had bragged to Naruto and Ningxi countless times about how powerful he was in actual combat training and how outstanding his performance was when facing his brother and Jishue, who were extraordinary. But now he understood that his brother Itachi and Jishue had been giving in to him from the beginning to the end. They did not take him seriously at all and treated him like a child. Damn it! At the thought of this, Sasuke clenched his teeth. He wanted to prove to his brother Itachi and Jishue that he was no longer a child, but a real ninja. On the side of the field, Ningxi looked at Sasuke, who was being guided by Shinichi, with a complicated expression. He did not know whether it was Sasuke's talent or Shinichi's guidance that was too effective. In short, Sasuke's progress these days was very amazing. Before, when he practiced with Sasuke, most of the time it ended in a draw. Sometimes he even had a slight advantage. After all, The combination of Byakugan and Soft Fist was undoubtedly an advantage in the stage of Genin and Chunin. But in the last 2 days, it became more and more difficult for him to practice with Sasuke. It was very difficult to maintain a draw, not to mention an advantage. When he was in the family, Ningxi thought that his talent would not lose to anyone. It was the cage bird curse mark on his forehead that bound him. It was the fate of the separate family that bound him. But after witnessing the rapid growth of Sasuke, he began to doubt it. Obsidian was also watching from the sidelines, and he was quite surprised by the growth of Sasuke. When he heard that Sasuke awakened his Sharingan at the age of 8, Obsidian was surprised, but he did not care too much. After all, at his level, ordinary geniuses are no longer worthy of his attention. But after seeing Sasuke's growth in the hands of Shinichi, Obsidian suddenly felt that Sasuke was indeed worth training. At this time, Shinichi said lightly, "That's all for today." Sasuke nodded and gasped. "Thank you, brother Shinichi." This thank you, Sasuke was sincere. No one knew his own strength better than him. So he felt that Uchiha Shinichi, who had the Manjikyu Sharingan, was actually more suitable to be his mentor than his brothers Itachi and Jishue, because his brothers Itachi and Jishue doted on him too much. Realizing this, Sasuke suddenly said, "Hey, it's really strange. Why do I like to be strict and scolded? Is there something wrong with me?" Mobile version of the fastest updated website. Chapter 553. In fact, ninjas need to be taught according to their aptitude. If a teacher with different styles instructs the same student, the final result is likely to be very different. For example, Sasuke, because of his outstanding talent and high ability to accept, he can learn some basic things easily. Coupled with the sense of honor of his family, he has an unyielding temperament. So the more powerful, cold, and even picky the teacher is, the better the guidance effect on him. For example, Shinichi and Orochimaru, who was his teacher and enemy in the original time and space. Naruto is different. His ability to accept is obviously much worse than Sasuke. Some basic things also need serious practice to master. Although his potential is sufficient and his upper limit is also high, he needs a patient teacher who is willing to work hard on him and carefully guide him in order to dig out his potential little by little. Teachers like Shinichi and Orochimaru are obviously not suitable for him. Sasuke obviously also realized that Shinichi is a suitable teacher for him. So he is particularly serious when practicing, and he doesn't complain about Shinichi's scolding and scolding. After retreating to the sidelines, Sasuke took the towel handed by Ningxi, wiped his sweat, and pondered the few mistakes he made in practice just now. Shinichi also walked slowly to the sidelines, glanced at Sasuke, who was gasping for breath, and thought to himself, "This kid has the talent to awaken Manjikyu Sharingan." Awakening Manjikyu Sharingan does indeed require intense mental stimulation, but the higher the talent, the smaller the stimulation required, and the higher the probability of awakening. Jishue awakened his Manjikyu Sharingan after witnessing the sacrifice of his companions on the battlefield, and this degree of stimulation is very common for ninjas. At this time, Ningxi came in front of Shinichi, first bowed respectfully, and then asked, "Shinichi-san, can you guide me?" Shinichi frowned a little embarrassedly. Ningxi's talent is actually not low, but he is not Uchiha's people, so Shinichi can't guide him like Sasuke. After all, Shinichi himself is not a teacher, so he can't teach him according to his aptitude. More importantly, Hyojin has already accepted Ningxi as his disciple, and Shinichi is not sure if Hyojin has any special plans for Ningxi, so he doesn't dare to guide Ningxi indiscriminately. Seeing Shinichi frown, Ningxi thought that Shinichi was impatient, so he quickly said to Shinichi, "I'm sorry, I was too rude." If it is not an elder who has a very close relationship with the younger generation, it is not easy to guide the younger generation. One must know that whether it is a variety of ninjutsu or techniques, they are precious wealth for a ninja, and even involves the inheritance of the family, so it is not easy to show it to others. This is also the reason why the children of noble shinobi are often better than the civilian shinobi, because the knowledge that the civilian shinobi can learn from the elders is far less than the children of noble shinobi. Shinichi shook his head and said, "It's not that I don't want to guide you, it's just that I don't have much research on your Hyuga clan soft fist, so I can't guide you. I was too reckless." Niji saluted Shinichi again and immediately retreated to the side, but the disappointment on his face was difficult to conceal. Not being able to receive guidance from someone who stands at the peak of the shinobi world like Shinichi is undoubtedly very uncomfortable for him. What's more, he watched Sasuke rapidly become stronger under the guidance of Shinichi. At the other end of the practice field, after watching Shinichi's guidance of Sasuke, Obsidian said to Zetsu, "It's been a few days. The informant I developed before should have gotten some results. Let your clone go to Mai." Zetsu smiled and said, "What kind of results will there be? It's really exciting." Root's secret laboratory. After finalizing the 5 goals of the fusion, Kekii Jinkai, Hyojin, and Orochimaru began to improve the ending part of the Chimera technique, as well as the design of the final ritual. In the huge laboratory, both of them were quietly busy with their own work. After some time, Orochimaru, who had finished the work at hand, stretched his neck, then shifted his gaze to Hyojin at the other end of the laboratory and asked in a deep voice, "Homisubi, aren't you worried at all?" "Worried about what?" Hyojin did not look up and continued to do the work at hand. Orochimaru's eyes were slightly cold and showed a rare, serious expression. "You should know better than me what we are doing now, right? Are you really not worried that Danzo will go out of control because of what we are doing?" At first, Orochimaru also had the mentality of using Danzo as a lab rat, trying to improve the Chimera technique. But seeing the Chimera technique, which could fundamentally fuse Kekii Jinkai with the Kekii Jinkai, was gradually perfected and the scientific problems and design flaws were solved one after another, Orochimaru did not know why, but he was a little afraid. He jumped out of the inherent concept, and from the perspective of a bystander, he re-examined the project and was completely shocked by the greatness of the project. Yes, even the always proud Orochimaru did not hesitate to use the word greatness to describe the project that was being carried out. Hyojin looked up and glanced at Orochimaru and said lightly, "You worry too much." "Worry too much?" Orochimaru frowned and said, "According to our plan, if Danzo can finally survive the fusion ceremony, do you know how many Kekii Jinkai he will have?" 7, a total of 7. Apart from the 5 powerful Kekii Jinkai, Dark Release, Rapid Release, Crystal Release, Boiling Release, and Mist Release, Danzo also has 2 Kekii Jinkai, Sharingan and Wood Release. Although Danzo can't use much of the Sharingan and Wood Release ability because of the limb transplant, as long as he survives the fusion ceremony, his body will complete a transformation. At that time, Danzo will completely master the power of Sharingan and Wood Release. As long as he survives the fusion ceremony, his body will complete a transformation. And at that time, Danzo will completely master the power of Sharingan and Wood Release. Sharingan, Wood Release, Dark Release, Rapid Release, Crystal Release, Boiling Release, Mist Release, and Yin-Yang 5 elements, a total of 7 Kekii Gunkai's Kekii Jinkai, including all the attributes of chakra. Just thinking about the combination of these 7-foot Kekii Jinkai would inevitably make one's scalp tingle. Orochimaru felt that they were trying to peek into a realm that belonged to God. If everything went smoothly and Danzo completed the final Kekii Jinkai fusion ceremony, then Danzo would probably become a new god, a god created by humans. Thinking of this, Orochimaru found that it seemed that only the word God creation could really match the project they were currently promoting. Chapter 554. 7 different types of Kekii, 7 different types of chakra. What will happen after they fuse? We're not fusing with the bloodline limit. We're trying to create a god. Orochimaru seemed to be in a daze, muttering to himself as if he was talking to Suijin, but at the same time, he seemed to be talking to himself. Hyojin then looked at Orochimaru with a profound gaze and said to himself, as expected of Orochimaru, there was no doubt that as the Chimera technique was perfected, Orochimaru had gradually realized what the final goal of this project was. Kekii limit was the fusion of two different types of chakra, and the more powerful Kekii elimination was the fusion of three different types of chakra. So the question was, what would happen after the fusion of 7 different types of chakra? The subordinates of Danzo's root were still arguing about which type of Kekii limit was stronger, which type of Kekii limit would work better, with which type of Kekii limit would work better, with which type of Kekii limit. However, they had neglected the most important point, which was what would happen after the fusion of 7 different types of chakra. And this was the real key to this project. Due to the limitation of his vision, Orochimaru didn't notice this at first. Just like Danzo and the other members of the Root Society, his vision was limited to the Kekii Genkai fusion ceremony. So he treated this project as a copy of Hiriko's Kekii Genkai fusion ceremony. But after Kuroto introduced the concepts of chakra attribute completion, chakra attribute balance, and other important concepts, he gradually realized that this project wasn't a copy of Hiriko's Kekii Genkai fusion ceremony, but an attempt to surpass Hiriko's Kekii Genkai fusion ceremony. Only now did he realize Amatsukumi's true ambition. Collecting his thoughts, Orochimaru looked at Hyojin in shock and asked in a low voice, "Is there really someone in your organization who wants to become a god?" Hyojin lowered his head again and busied himself with the task at hand, ignoring Orochimaru's question. Orochimaru frowned. Isn't Amatsukumi afraid of playing with fire? If you allow Danzo to reach that level first, then the shinobi world won't be able to contain your Amatsukumi anymore. Hyojin said calmly, "It's not that easy." Why? Orochimaru was puzzled. He did not understand why Hyojin was so sure that the Danzo would not succeed. In his opinion, the Danzo had a high chance of succeeding. Hyojin glanced at Orochimaru and said, "If it is so easy to become a god, then why would Amatsukumi cooperate with Danzo? It is impossible for Danzo to become a god. Hyojin is sure of this, because the core of the Chimera technique is the fusion of flesh and blood. No matter how much it is improved, it is impossible to change this core. Therefore, the Chimera technique has a fatal flaw. It cannot deal with the soul. What is the essence of the soul? Hyojin can't fully explain it at the moment, but there is one thing that Hyojin knows, that is, the carrier of the soul is chakra. In other words, the soul of a ninja also contains a certain amount of chakra. The Chimera technique can't fuse with the soul, which means it can't fuse with the part of chakra that carries the soul. In other words, no matter how much Chimera technique is improved, it will not be able to achieve a complete fusion in the true sense. The impurities that exist in the form of the soul will be a problem that can never be solved during the fusion process, unless the target of the fusion is a clone without a soul. The current Orochimaru obviously hasn't fully realized this point. The forbidden technique he developed, undead reincarnation, was also because he neglected to deal with the soul. He crudely sealed the souls of all the ninjas whose bodies were seized by him in his own body, causing his own soul to become mottled and weak. In addition, Danzo's aging physique is also a fatal problem that hinders his success. If he wants to fuse with the flesh and blood of others 5 times his own, even with the help of the Chimera technique, he must have a strong body. In this regard, not only is Danzo old and weak, but his body is also incomplete. It can even be said to be broken. With his main body in such a state, trying to break through the bloodline sequence net was simply a fool's dream, let alone achieving the bloodline sequence net. It was a big question mark whether he could even endure the fusion ceremony. And Hyojin once made a bold prediction to himself. With his current technology, using his Tenseigan's in-release as the core, and fusing with 6 clones that are compatible with his bloodline and have no soul, the hope of breaking through the Kekii net is very slim. The probability is almost less than 10%. From this, it can be seen how difficult the road of breaking through the Kekii net is. Therefore, from the beginning to the end, Hyojin has never worried that Danzo will become a Kekiai net. Because the probability of such a situation is 0, there is no possibility of luck. Even if Danzo is lucky, the best result for him is to barely survive the Kekiai fusion ceremony and become a semi-fusion body with serious hidden dangers like Hiriko. The more likely possibility is that he will either die on the spot, die directly at the scene of the ceremony, or become an unpredictable monster, a walking corpse with multiple personalities. Thinking about Hyojin's words, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes. You're not optimistic about Danzo's Kekiai fusion ceremony this time? Hyojin curled his lips. I only believe in the facts, and the fact is that Hiriko, who has completed the Kekiai fusion ceremony, is vulnerable. So I have some expectations for Danzo's Kekiai fusion ceremony this time. But that's all. Hey, I'm afraid only your Amatsukami dares to say that Hiriko is vulnerable. After a smile, Orochimaru said to himself, maybe I'm too optimistic. The domain of the gods shouldn't be so easy for us mortals to step into. At this time, Hyojin also finished his work and asked Orochimaru, by the way, how is the Danzo capturing Kekiai Nin going? Orochimaru replied, it's going well. I heard that 3 targets have been captured. Although the Danzo's route has been abolished by the 3 generations, there is still a group of elite ninjas under Danzo, and there are actually many kinds of Kekiai Nin in the shinobi world. So as long as the intelligence is collected well, it is not difficult to capture 5 Kekiai Nin who meet the conditions. So fast. Hyojin was a little surprised and immediately asked, when does Danzo plan to carry out the Kekiai fusion ceremony? Orochimaru smiled playfully. I'm afraid it will have to wait until he sits in the position of Naruto. Chapter 555. Ascend to the position of Naruto. Under the flame mask, Hyojin's face darkened slightly. These days, he only focused on improving the Chimera technique and did not get distracted by other things, so he did not know much about the recent movements of the Danzo. After listening to Orochimaru, he realized that the Danzo was probably going to launch a coup against the 3 generations in the near future. However, whether it was a coup by force or political means to launch a coup against the 3 generations, he still had no way of knowing. However, judging from common sense, the probability of the Danzo using force against the 3 generations was not high because Jiraiya and Tsunade were still in the village. In terms of high-end combat power, the 3 generations had an absolute advantage. After pondering for a moment, Hyojin warned Orochimaru, Nine-Tails Jinchuriki and the eldest daughter of the Hyuga clan are in your hands, right? Mai and the Hyuga clan have entrusted Amatsukami with a rescue mission. I don't care what agreement you have with the Danzo. In short, you have to ensure their safety. Otherwise, Amatsukami will have to consider whether or not to intervene. In order to improve the Chimera technique as soon as possible, Hyojin must maintain the fragile cooperation between Orochimaru and the Danzo. Therefore, he did not try to forcibly rescue Naruto and Hinata from Orochimaru. Orochimaru smiled, don't worry. They are important chips for the Danzo to ascend to the position of Naruto. It seems that the Danzo is really going to direct and act out a show to rescue Nine-Tails Jinchuriki and the eldest daughter of the Hyuga clan. After cursing in his heart, Hyojin said no more and left the laboratory. After switching back to his escape body in a secluded place, Hyojin walked towards the village while pondering his next step. During this period of time, he had taken the time to return to his Sky Fortress a few times to confirm that the Type A Wind Escape clone body had been replaced. The blood disease in his body was temporarily contained and did not continue to worsen. Just like that, this Type A Wind Escape clone was officially renamed as the Wind Escape clone. However, due to the strength of this Wind Escape clone being too high, the overall standard was immediately raised, resulting in the Water Escape clone and Fire Escape clone that had already been developed to be relatively weak. They needed to be further strengthened. However, these were not the most pressing issues for Hyojin. To Hyojin, the pressing issue was which type of clone he should develop next after the development of the Wind Escape clone. The Akatsuki organization was like a vicious dog chasing behind him, so he didn't dare to relax for even a moment. He didn't know when Nagato would attack again, so he could only seize every second. And now, the only choices left in front of him were the Earth Element clone, the Thunder Element clone, and the Yang Element clone. After thinking about it for a while, Hyojin made a decision. The Yang Element clone involves too many technical difficulties, so it is best to leave it as the last one to be solved. The Thunder Element chakra is the most unstable, and the difficulty of self-fusion is the highest among the 5 elements of chakra. So, according to the principle of easy first, the best choice right now is undoubtedly the Earth Element clone. Whose cell should I choose this time? After deciding to clone the Earth Element clone, Hyojin thought about it. The first candidate that flashed in his mind was undoubtedly the 3 generations Inoki. Dust Release is the most well-known Kekkei Genkai elimination in the shinobi world, and it can be said that it is the strongest representative of the Earth Kekkei Genkai. But soon Hyojin rejected this idea. It's not that he was worried about not being able to get the cells of the 3 generations Suchikage, but that the vitality of the 3 generations Suchikage has long declined, and the 3 generations Suchikage is not like the first Naruto, who has an unparalleled sage body, so the cells of the 3 generations Suchikage are not the best choice for Hyojin. After eliminating the 3 generations Suchikage, Hyojin thought about it, and found that there are not many candidates for him to choose from, because the most representative of the Earth Kekkei Genkai are Dust Release and Wood Release. Thinking about it, Hyojin suddenly thought of a person, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Hyojin thought of no one else. It was the member of the Akatsuki, one of the art duo Dedale. As the disciple of the 3 generations Suchikage, Dedale's talent is unquestionable, and his age is also very suitable. His cells are in the most active stage, plus his main Earth attribute and secondary Fire attribute Kekkei Genkai. It can be said that in all aspects, he perfectly meets the standard of Hyojin to clone an Earth Element clone. Moreover, as long as he mastered Explosion Release, it is not completely impossible to cultivate Dust Release. Because in theory, as long as the Wind attribute is added to the Earth and Fire attributes of Explosion Release, the 3 chakra attributes of Earth, Fire, and Wind are perfectly integrated, then he can use Dust Release. Of course, this is just a theory. In the actual practice, there are bound to be many difficulties. Otherwise, in the Rock Village, only the 3 generations Suchikage and Noki can master Dust Release. Thinking along the way, Hyojin quietly returned to the village. After returning home, he found that there is an extra scroll in the room. When he opened it, he found that there is only one coordinate on the scroll and nothing else. Putting away the scroll, Hyojin chuckled and said, "Contact from the Akatsuki." It's only been a few days. Obsidian is really impatient. For the scroll that suddenly appeared in his home, Hyojin was not surprised because he has already told the Obsidian about the frequency of a new perception barrier. So Ju and his clone can once again freely enter and exit the My Village. The reason why he did this is because even if Hyojin didn't say it, Obsidian can easily kidnap an Umbu of Mai and use Jinjutsu to torture any information he wants. After all, for a master like Obsidian, this level of information is easy to get, so instead of letting Obsidian harm other Umbu, it is better to tell Obsidian directly. Not long after, Hyojin arrived at the coordinates on the scroll, which is a dense forest outside the village. After finding that there is no one around, Hyojin knew that because it is the first contact, Akatsuki can't completely trust him, so he directly left his information scroll and left the dense forest. After a while, a white figure poked out from the ground, looked around for a while, and finally picked up the information scroll that Hyojin put on the ground and retreated back into the ground. At the same time, in the dense forest at the other end of the village, Itachi, who received the contact from Akatsuki, also put an information scroll on the ground, and then quietly left like Hyojin. Chapter 556. In the Akatsuki's base, Zetsu's avatar passed the 2 scrolls of information he got from Mai to Obsidian and said, "These are the information you got from the informants you arranged in Mai." Obsidian asked casually, "Did it go well?" As for Uchiha Itachi, he doesn't have much to worry about, but for some reason, he always feels that he can't see through Uchiha Itachi. Perhaps Itachi's performance was too calm when they met before. Zetsu replied, "It went well. After your informants received the message, they quickly rushed to the place of contact, and they were alone. There are no suspicious people following them." Obsidian nodded with satisfaction. Immediately, he opened the scroll sent by Hyojin and glanced at the information recorded on it. His face became solemn. Zetsu quickly asked, "What information is it?" Obsidian said in a deep voice, "My informant said that Mai and Amatsukami have signed several agreements. Not long ago, Amatsukami's female, Inferno, appeared in the village and talked with 3 generations in Naruto's office for a long time." Zetsu also frowned. "I didn't expect Amatsukami and Mai to have such a close relationship. It seems that we have to be more careful in Mai in the future." Obsidian gently nodded. "In the past, even when 4 generations Naruto was still alive, my village was regarded as Obsidian's backyard. He could come and go as he pleased. But after receiving this information from Hyojin, he secretly raised the danger level of my village. Since Inferno dared to openly appear in my village, he couldn't rule out the possibility that Amatsukami has a secret contact point in my village. If they ran into the members of God's organization, especially Yama, Balrog, and Windchime, the consequences would be dire." Zetsu then asked, "Did your informant find out more about Amatsukami?" Obsidian shook his head. He said that Amatsukami only has contact with the 3 generations of Naruto. As for the others in the village, even the Umbu, they have no right to ask about Amatsukami. Absolute was doubtful. Can his words be trusted? Obsidian waved the intelligence scroll in his hand with a mocking look on his face. "Do you know what he wrote at the end of the scroll? Not only did he ask me to release the child of the Hyuga clan immediately, but he also asked me to keep my promise and provide him with a method to remove the cage bird curse." "Umph. Do you think such a greedy fool would dare to lie to me?" Zhu Xiao said, "Looks like you found his weak spot. It's really sad to be a member of the Hyuga clan." After sighing a little, Obsidian continued, "But I don't have the energy to crack the cage bird curse." After awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan, Obsidian no longer put Byakugan in his eyes, so he has no motivation to crack the cage bird curse. Zetsu said, "Now that we have him under control, it's better to force him to steal the information of Amatsukami from 3 generations of Naruto. Anyway, with this evidence of collusion with the enemy, he can't turn back anymore, so he shouldn't dare to refuse our request." Obsidian nodded while opening the second intelligence scroll, but as soon as the scroll unfolded, his expression suddenly became very ugly. Zetsu remembered that this intelligence scroll was sent by Itachi Uchiha. Seeing Obsidian's expression, Zetsu asked, "Did he find out the identity of Homusubi of Amatsukami?" Obsidian threw the scroll to Zetsu with a black face. Zetsu opened the scroll and saw that it clearly wrote, "Uchiha Obsidian is suspected to be Homusubi of Amatsukami." Obsidian said angrily, "I didn't find Homusubi, but he found me." Ryuchi Cave. Ichikari Shimahime smiled and touched Naruto's head and praised, "Naruto, you learned so fast." "Really?" Naruto, whose face was covered with snake scales, was pleasantly surprised. Ichikari Shimahime counted with her fingers and said, "Yes, among all the people I've taught, you're the fastest at learning, Sinja." "Huh!" Naruto, who was rarely praised, suddenly laughed heartily. As a member of the Uzumaki clan and the reincarnation of the Otsutsuki Azura, Chakra, Naruto's physique was very special. He was born with the talent to absorb and use natural energy. Coupled with his simple mind, he didn't have any mental baggage, nor did he have any messy ambitions and evil thoughts. His mentality was very compatible with natural energy. This was even better than him in the original time and space. In the original time and space, he went to Mount Mayaboku to learn Senjutsu with the selfish intention of improving his strength, defeating the Akatsuki organization, and finding Sasuke. He also knew that if he failed to learn Senjutsu, he would become a mindless stone statue. At this time, although he was still young, he was pure and innocent. He didn't even know what would happen if he failed to learn Senjutsu. Therefore, he was more in tune with nature, and his cultivation speed was very fast. Even Ichikari Shimahime, who was responsible for teaching him, was shocked. It should be known that although Ikimahime had guided many ninjas who had entered the Ryuchi Cave, so far, no one had really mastered the Ryuchi Cave's Senjutsu through her guidance. Without exception, all the ninjas who had been guided by her had become mindless stone statues. That was why she was so sure that Naruto was the fastest one she had guided. Seeing that Naruto's eyes had also turned into the vertical pupils of a snake, Ichikari Shimahime said, "Well, you've now entered Senjutsu mode. Go over there and try the effect." "Is it done?" Naruto, who had been sitting and absorbing natural energy for several hours, immediately jumped up. Ichikari Shimahime pointed to the stone wall in the distance and said, "Try punching the stone wall." Naruto walked to the stone wall doubtfully and reached out to touch it. He found that it was a very hard rock, so he said hesitantly, "Sister, it's so hard. If I punch it, I'm afraid my fist will be swollen for several days." Giggle, Ichikari Shimahime covered her mouth and laughed. Then, she signaled Naruto with her eyes not to be afraid. Seeing this, Naruto had to close his eyes and punch the hard stone wall. Boom! In an instant, the ground in the cave shook and the mountain rumbled. With his eyes closed, Naruto was at a loss and exclaimed, "Hey, what's wrong? Is it an earthquake?" Ichikari Shimahime, who was not far away, said with a smile, "Naruto, is your fist swollen?" Only then did Naruto come back to his senses. He looked at his fist in a daze and found that the fist that hit the rock wall was unscathed. Then he raised his head and looked at the rock wall. He saw that there was a big hole in the rock wall in front of him. Chapter 557. Was I the one who made this big hole? After a while, Naruto, who was staring at the big hole in a daze, finally came to his senses. Ichikishima came over with a smile and explained, "Under the sage mode of our Ryuchi Cave, your speed, strength, perception, and even your body's recovery ability have all improved by leaps and bounds. You are no longer an ordinary person." Naruto exclaimed, "Wow, that's great." Breaking a wall with one punch was a common occurrence for Naruto, but that was only limited to his dreams. Covering her mouth and smiling, Ichikishima continued, "The magic of natural energy is not only this. Naruto, try to press your hand on the rock wall." Without the slightest hesitation, Naruto immediately stretched out his hand and pressed it on the rock wall. Ichikishima whispered in Naruto's ear, "Try to empty your mind, restrain your thoughts, and recall the appearance of the rock wall before you broke it." Following Ichikishima instruction, Naruto closed his eyes and tried to recall the original appearance of the rock wall. Unbeknownst to Naruto, the rock wall that was just broken by his punch seemed to be endowed with life. It slowly wriggled, and the broken hole was being repaired bit by bit as it wriggled. After a moment, Naruto opened his eyes and found that the rock wall in front of him had been restored to its original state, and the big hole he just broke was completely gone. "Huh?" Naruto scratched his head, looking puzzled. Ichikishima smiled and said, "This is the power of the sage." Naruto looked at Ichikishima expectantly and asked, "Sister, can I defeat Sasuke now?" "Who is Sasuke?" Ichikishima was confused. Naruto explained, "Sasuke is my good friend. Although he's a bit arrogant, he is a real genius. He awakened Sharingan not long ago." "Sharingan? Is Sasuke one of Uchiha's clansmen?" After a pause, Ikimahime regained her smile. "Naruto, don't worry. You've already learned how to absorb natural energy. Under the immortal mode, no one of your human peers is your opponent. The same goes for that Uchiha clan kid. Koko has Sharingan. Naruto is still a little unconfident, because what he has heard the most in the village is how powerful the Sharingan is and how powerful Uchiha is. Ichikishima Haim smiled and said, "Won't you know when you meet him?" "Yeah, we'll know once we fight." Just as Naruto relaxed his brows, he seemed to have thought of something and immediately furrowed his brows. "But if I want to enter the immortal mode, I have to sit for a few hours to absorb the natural energy. That's too troublesome. Sister, do you have a faster way to enter the immortal mode?" Ichikishima Haim shook her head. "There's no shortcut to absorbing natural energy. You can only practice for a long time to make your body fit with nature and slowly increase the speed of absorption." Actually, there's one more thing that Ichikishima Haim forgot to tell Naruto. The environment inside the Ryuchi cave was very special. The nature energy in the air was very dense, several times that of the outside world. The reason why Yugo's village had mutated was because it was too close to the crack that connected to the Ryuchi cave. As a result, it was attacked by the excessive nature energy from the Ryuchi cave. Therefore, Naruto only needs to absorb natural energy in the Ryuchi cave for a few hours to smoothly enter the immortal mode. But if he was outside, he would have to spend 2 to 3 times the time to absorb natural energy to barely enter the immortal mode. Ichikishima Haim, who only taught a bunch of stone statues, didn't realize this. My village. Hyojin released a communication crow at home, and then went out. After setting his next target on Dead Ale, Hyojin secretly investigated the Dale's current situation through the intelligence network of the Mayumbu. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't investigated Kuroto, but after investigating Kuroto, he discovered that Dedale was indeed a problem child. As the most talented disciple of the 3 generations Inoki, he joined the most elite explosion team of the Rock Village at the age of 8, but at the age of 9, he was forced to leave the village because he caused several terrorist incidents that caused a sensation in the land of Earth. Now, at the age of 11, he wandered around the shinobi world and caused 1 or 2 explosions from time to time. If it weren't for the sake of the 3 generations Inoki, he would have already been wanted by the 5 major countries. Hyojin doesn't have the energy to look for such a problem child, so he just sent a message to the 4 generations Mizuki Jigura through the crow, mobilizing the Mist Umbu to search the shinobi world and find the whereabouts of Dedale. After leaving home, Hyojin went directly to the Umbu base. At this time, the Umbu base was crowded with people. Except for the members who went out to perform tasks, almost all the Umbu members in the village have gathered in the base. After greeting the 3 subordinates, Red, Gale, and Quian, Hyojin crossed his arms and stood in a corner. The reason why the Umbu members are gathered in the Umbu base at this moment is because early this morning, the village advisory elder, Shimura Danzo, officially announced the dismissal of the 3 generations Naruto. Because Naruto is involved, the Umbu directly under Naruto must naturally gather and obey the orders of the 3 generations. However, as Hyojin expected, this time, Danzo has no intention of using force, and in order to maintain the stability of the village, the 3 generations will also not use force. Therefore, although the Umbu has gathered, the smell of gunpowder in the Umbu base is not too heavy. Some Umbu members even whispered and discussed the dismissal proposed by Danzo. Not long after, Kakashi, Guy, Jishue, and a group of acquaintances also arrived at the base. After greeting each other, Kakashi, with drooping eyes, let out a long yawn. Hyojin asked casually, "Didn't sleep well?" Kakashi shook his head and said, "No, it's just that I seem to have practiced a bit too much recently. The destruction of their home has greatly affected many my ninjas, and the strength of Amitsukami and Akatsuki has also caused a strong sense of crisis in the hearts of my ninjas. From Jiraiya, Tsunade, to Kakashi, Asuma, Guy, and other new generations of my ninjas, all actively devoted themselves to practicing after the war. For a time, the practice field around Mai can be said to be overcrowded. Unlike the dispirited and undisciplined person he was in the original space-time, the current Kakashi Although he still looked indifferent on the surface, those who knew him knew that he had completely changed. This could be seen from the way he trained like he was risking his life to do so. Chapter 558. Hyojin carefully looked at Kakashi at this time, and found that Kakashi's temperament has changed. Compared to before, there seems to be a sense of sharpness. Is it because of the flying thunder god technique? Kuroto pondered in his heart. He has also done some research on space-time ninjutsu in private, and after research, he found that space-time ninjutsu has an unusually huge burden on the body of the caster. It is difficult to determine whether this burden is squeezing or tearing. In short, under normal circumstances, almost no one's body can bear this degree of burden. It is also because of this that anyone who can practice space-time ninjutsu is a rare genius. Even 1 in 10,000, 4 generations Naruto, is the same, and so is Kakashi. At the same time, because of the huge burden on the body caused by traveling through space and time, the ninjas who practice space-time ninjutsu is also unknowingly tempering their own physique and honing their own control of chakra. So Kakashi practicing flying thunder god technique is actually a kind of tempering for himself. And this kind of tempering belongs to a relatively high-end way of practice. This was because in the process of traveling through space and time, every joint and every muscle in the body had to withstand the compression and tearing of space and time. There were no blind spots or blind spots. Therefore, this kind of cultivation was far more efficient than the current ordinary cultivation methods of physical skills. It was a dangerous and highly effective cultivation method. It's only been a little more than a month, and I feel like I've been reborn. Kakashi's talent is really retracting his gaze. Hyojin secretly sighed. At present, it is difficult to say whether the loss of the Manjikyu Sharingan is a good thing for Kakashi. If Kakashi, without the burden of the Manjikyu Sharingan, can master the flying thunder god technique, like 4 generations, and play with the thunder release ninjutsu, then his strength may not be weaker than him in the original time and space. One must know that Kakashi in the original time and space is a copy ninja who will collapse after using Chidori 3 or 4 times. At this time, listening to the whispers of the surrounding Umbu members, Guy asked everyone with a worried face, "Do you think Naruto-sama will be in trouble this time?" Kakashi sighed faintly. Because he was close to Asuma, Kakashi had a clearer understanding of the political game between the village's top officials than the General Assassination Unit. He knew that the 3 generations were facing great trouble. The first to bear the brunt was not the internal troubles of the village, but the pressure from the daimyos of the Fire Nation. This time, the daimyo of the Land of Fire bore more than half of the cost for the reconstruction of the village. It was also because of this huge expenditure that the daimyo of the Land of Fire was extremely dissatisfied with the 3 generations. And no one knows what means Danzo used to persuade the daimyo of the Land of Fire, who has always supported the 3 generations, to switch to his side. Secondly, the large number of casualties in the village caused the dissatisfaction of the families of the victims to continue to accumulate. As for the Naruto of the 3 generations, even if he has done his best, he still has to bear the responsibility for the destruction of the village and bear the emotions of the families of the victims. Finally, Hinata, Sasuke, and the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki were captured by the enemy during the war, causing the 3 generations to lose a lot of points in front of the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan. Although the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan did not explicitly support the Danzo, but they did not immediately stand up to support the 3 generations, which in fact has already explained their position. The accumulation of various factors has led to the current situation of the 3 generations being very unfavorable. Jishue also said with some worry, "I hope that Naruto-sama can get through this crisis." Danzo once attacked Jishue and tried to seize his Manjikyu Sharingan. So Jishue has a very bad impression of Danzo, and on the issue of which side to support, he clearly expressed his attitude to Patriarch Fuyue. But Fuyue considered that the 3 generations and Danzo are both from the Naruto bloodline, and because of the successive return of Jiraiya and Tsunade, The power of the three generations has greatly increased, so for the sake of political balance, Fuyue finally represented the Uchiha clan to maintain a neutral position, sitting back and watching the infighting between Danzo and the three generations, the two leaders of the Naruto bloodline. Today's Uchiha clan is different from the original time and space. Because Jishue is still alive, coupled with the active activities of the Uchiha clansmen in Amatsukami and Akatsuki, the name of Uchiha clan has become more and more resounding in the shinobi world. And because of the pressure of external enemies, the Naruto bloodline, who is in power in the village, had to compromise and change the policy of suppression of the Uchiha clan, making the Uchiha clan's power and reputation in the village grow day by day. Therefore, the Uchiha clan maintained a neutral position, playing a bad role in leading the other clans to follow suit. Not long after, Zhuan Shaochun, as the village's advisory elder, came to the Umbu base and conveyed to the gathered Umbu members the decision of the village's top management. That is, the village will hold a vote of confidence in Naruto 6 days later. Shinobi and above are eligible to participate in this vote. Kakashi muttered to himself, "Sigh, I didn't expect things to get to this point." Although he was a little worried before, he still trusted the three generations and felt that the three generations must have a way to get through this crisis. But he didn't think that things would deteriorate to this point. One must know that once a vote of confidence is held, no matter what the result is, it will be a serious blow to the prestige of the three generations. Guy and Jishue on the side looked even more worried. They are obviously surprised and uneasy about this result. In this regard, Hyojin doesn't have any attitude, and he doesn't intend to intervene in this matter. Because if he wants to carry out the Kekkei Genkai ritual, Danzo taking the position of Naruto is one of the necessary conditions, because the manpower and material resources required for the follow-up experiment are not something that the Roots can afford. If Danzo can't take the position of Naruto, then the related experiment may be delayed for 1 or 2 years, or even longer. What's more, it's not like the three generations have never stepped down before. The reason why 4 generations came to power was because Danzo and a group of people questioned some of the decisions made by the three generations in the Third Shinobi War, forcing the three generations to take the initiative to resign from the position of Naruto. After leaving the Umbu base, Hyojin walked back home while thinking. Danzo delayed the vote of confidence to 6 days later. It's probably because of his self-directed drama. With the current situation in the village, if the vote of confidence is held immediately, the probability of Danzo taking the position is actually not high, because although everyone has various doubts about the three generations, in the face of a strong enemy, like the Akatsuki organization, everyone knows what it means to have an experienced and powerful Naruto. So before a strong person can replace the three generations, the position of the three generations is relatively stable. But if Danzo's self-directed drama to save the Nine Tails Jinchuriki and the eldest daughter of the Hyuga clan, then the result will be difficult to predict. Baiju's doppelganger didn't expect that Hyojin would be so strong. He was startled for a moment and then said, "Don't forget, the information scroll you sent last time is still in our hands. Think about it. If we give that scroll to Naruto, what will happen to you?" Hyojin pressed his hand on the hilt of the Kusanagi sword and said coldly, "Threats are useless to me. I know it won't be that fast to crack the caged bird, but releasing my disciple is the premise of our cooperation. If you won't even release my disciple, why should I believe in your sincerity? Why should I take the risk for you?" Baiju's doppelganger was speechless for a moment. Breaking up with Hyojin isn't the best choice for Akatsuki, because even if they get rid of Hyojin, they won't get any benefits. If they find another informant, not only will it arouse Mai's vigilance, but they will also encounter the same problem as Hyojin. "All right, I'll report your conditions to the organization, but if you really want to get rid of the caged bird on your forehead, you must provide us with real and effective information. There's no room for negotiation on this point." After saying that, Baiju's doppelganger didn't give Hyojin time to answer and hurriedly went underground. Kuroto couldn't say why, but when facing Kuroto, he always felt panic in his heart for no reason, and he felt that Kuroto wasn't as bad as the Obito said. After confirming that Baiju's doppelganger has left, Hyojin stepped forward and picked up the right arm of Baiju's doppelganger that he had just cut off. The sudden attack just now was actually intentional, because if he wants Danzo to last longer in the Kekkei Genkai ritual and provide him with more and more detailed experimental data, he must first solve the problem of Danzo's body. Although the right arm that Danzo transplanted has the characteristic of not rejecting any transplanted organ, it is still not Danzo's own flesh and blood, so it will inevitably become an uncertain factor in the ritual. To make up for this loophole, the best way is to change the right arm, a right arm that can only be in line with Danzo's body. Hyojin once considered using the cells of Baiju's doppelganger to clone a right arm, but not only is it time-consuming and laborious, it will also expose his cloning technology to Danzo and Orochimaru. So when he saw that the Akatsuki organization's contact person was a special Baiju clone, he naturally thought of cutting off the right arm of Baiju. Because Danzo has already transplanted the Hashirama cells, transplanting the right arm of Baiju's doppelganger is not a problem for him, and it can further strengthen his aging body. But how to put this right arm into Danzo's hands? Hyojin needs to spend some time thinking. Fortunately, this place is very close to the village, and not far from the new base of Danzo's route. As long as he casually set up a trap, he can lead the root ninja to discover this unique right arm. Another contact point. Just like Hyojin, Itachi also received a communication scroll from the Akatsuki organization. Because he is worried about Sasuke's safety, Itachi rushed to the coordinates on the scroll early, and seeing that there is no Akatsuki organization's contact person around, he leaned against a tree and waited quietly. After a while, Baiju's doppelganger, whose arm was cut off by Hyojin, appeared in front of Itachi. Seeing that the Akatsuki organization's contact person is not the mysterious person wearing a vortex mask and claiming to be Uchiha Madara, but a strange person with a missing right arm, Itachi frowned. Baiju's doppelganger didn't try to be mysterious and directly said, "You can call me Zetsu. I will be responsible for contacting you from now on. We have been following up on the information you sent last time, but we still need you to provide us with more suspects." Itachi calmly said, "According to your request, I have read the relevant records of the clan. Although many clansmen went missing in the Third Shinobi War, but either their corpses were found one after another, or there were eyewitnesses of their deaths. The only one who is really judged as missing is Uchiha Obsidian. You want me to find more suspects so quickly? Could it be that you have ruled him out as a suspect? Poster, share." Chapter 560. The information that Itachi passed to the Akatsuki last time wasn't instructed by Hyojin. As one of the Homusubi of Amatsukami, Itachi is very clear about who the Homusubi are, and he also knows that the missing Uchiha clansmen from the Third Shinobi World War aren't among the Homusubi. So he followed Obsidian's instructions and checked the files of the missing clansmen from the Third Shinobi World War. And according to the files, almost all the missing clansmen from the Third Shinobi World War were found after the war, and the remaining small number of missing clansmen either had witnesses of their deaths or were confirmed to have been taken away by some shinobi village through the spies. In short, the missing clansmen from the Third Shinobi World War are the only one who is missing, the hero of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Obsidian. Although they are witnesses of Uchiha Obsidian's death, when Itachi looked through the files, he found that whether it was Kakashi or Noara Rin, their description of Obsidian's death was that he was buried by rocks. In other words, they only saw Obsidian being buried by rocks, but they didn't really witness Obsidian's death, so it's possible that Obsidian was captured or rescued. If there are no subsequent events, then the final destination of the hero of Mai, Uchiha Obsidian, would be the battle of the god No Obsidian. But with the Akatsuki's activities in the shinobi world, strange things happened one after another, especially when Kakashi was attacked, and the Manjikyu Sharingan that was transplanted into Obsidian was taken away, which made the mystery of Obsidian's death even more doubtful. Itachi was good at analysis and could sort out the clues from the complicated threads. So after realizing this, he deliberately passed the information that Uchiha Obsidian is suspected to be an Akatsuki Balrog to the Akatsuki, and through the feedback from the Akatsuki, he faintly felt that he seemed to have found out the identity of the Uchiha who wore the Vortex mask. However, he doesn't understand why Uchiha Obsidian, Mai's hero, would become a member of the Akatsuki organization and want to destroy Mai. In response to Itachi's question, White Jew's doppelganger laughed dryly and diverted the topic. The reason why I asked for other suspects is that there's a female Balrog in Amatsukumi's organization. The Uchiha clan should have received the news as well. We need to find her. Itachi stared at by Jew's doppelganger in silence. White Jew's doppelganger then said, "That female Balrog has the Manjikyu Sharingan. Such a powerful woman must be rare in your clan, so it shouldn't be difficult to find her." "I could try." After a pause, Itachi continued, "But you must release my brother first." White Jew's doppelganger nodded and said, "Don't worry, I will report the conditions to the organization, Akatsuki's base." Suddenly, a mournful wail, like that of a vengeful soul, penetrated the layers of walls and pierced the eardrums of Sasuke and Neji, causing them to stop practicing in the practice field and look at each other in dismay. Sasuke asked Ningxi, What was that sound just now?" Ningxi shook his head. His face was also full of horror. The wail just now seemed to be full of pain and despair, and that kind of sound doesn't sound like a human being at all. It feels like some kind of ghost is hiding in the depths of the base. Sasuke turned his head to look at Shinichi on the sidelines and asked, "Brother Shinichi, what was that sound just now?" "Don't be distracted. Continue to practice." After reprimanding Sasuke, Shinichi glanced in the direction of the wail with a thoughtful look on his face. Outside a secret room in the depths of the base, Konan asked Sasori with a solemn expression, "How is the situation?" Sasori shook his head. Kakuzu also remained silent. The wail just now came from this secret room, and the person locked in this secret room is none other than Hiriko, who was rescued by Obsidian using Kamui. On the battlefield at that time, Hiriko was indeed decapitated by Hyojin, who was controlling the wind release clone. With such injuries, if it was anyone else, they would have died without a doubt. But KB Ryuko is different because when he recruited Yomi, he mastered the dark medical ninjutsu of Yomi, and it was with this dark medical ninjutsu that Yomi faked his death to deceive Suijin, and after his head was cut off by Suijin, he came back to life. However, although Hiriko escaped death on the spot, he couldn't escape the backlash of the Onigiri in his body. After being decapitated, Hiriko's organs began to deteriorate, and his chakra gradually collapsed, which directly caused the demon sprout in his body to lose its restraint, and in just a few dozen minutes, Hiriko's body was twisted into a mess. When Kuroto returned to the Kamui space after the battle, he was surprised to find that Hiriko's body was in a complete mess. All of this is just as Suijin predicted. The demon sprout that gave birth to Hiriko will eventually become Hiriko's death talisman, and Hiriko will inevitably die because of the demon sprout. It's only a matter of time. This is also the reason why Hyojin worked together with Danzo and Orochimaru to improve the Onigiri technique. After a while, Lilnan asked again, "Is there no other way?" Hiriko is a loyal follower of Nagato, and his strength is also strong enough, so Konan is not willing to give up such a powerful subordinate. Scorpion said, "His body has been contaminated, and my puppet technique is useless." Seeing Conan's gaze sweeping over, Kakuzu could only say that forbidden technique he used to fuse with the blood limit technique has a huge hidden danger. It's already a miracle that he managed to survive until now. The Onigiri in Hiriko's body is somewhat similar to the Earth Grudge in Kakuzu's body, but the Onigiri's ability to dissolve and devour flesh and blood is too terrifying. In Kakuzu's view, if he were to absorb this thing into his body, it might backfire on him. It's no different from courting death. Seeing that both Sasori and Kakuzu can't do anything, Conan could only accept this fact. Then what will happen to him? Is he going to die just like that? Through the observation window of the secret room, Sasori looked inside and immediately shook his head. I'm afraid no one knows what will happen to him. Maybe he will turn into a lifeless mass of flesh and blood. Maybe he will turn into some kind of monster. Among the people present, no one has the ability to predict the result of the Onigiri technique going berserk, even in the entire shinobi world. No one has this kind of prediction ability, because the onigiri technique developed by Hiriko has touched the domain of the gods, so no one can predict what will happen to the onigiri after it goes berserk. Chapter 561. While Conan was still having a headache about Hiriko's matter, in another underground chamber of the Akatsuki's base, Zetsu's doppelganger, who had just returned from Mai, was reporting the conditions proposed by Hyojin and Itachi to Obsidian and Zetsu. Oh, it seems that I have underestimated him. Listening to Zetsu's doppelganger's report, Obsidian chuckled while looking at Zetsu's right arm that was cut off, but his face was calm as usual. It seems that he was just a little surprised by Hyojin's action. Zetsu asked, "Should we agree to their conditions?" Obsidian thought for a while with his chin in his hand and said, "If we don't agree to their conditions, I'm afraid they won't be able to collect information about Amatsukami for us." Zetsu asked again, "Should we release those two children together?" Obsidian nodded and said, "Well, let's release them together. Anyway, these two children are useless in our hands." Sasuke and Ningxi fell into the hands of Akatsuki at the same time, which is a well-known fact, so it's either release them together or release them together. Otherwise, they won't be able to appease two informants at the same time. The Mist Squad that raided Orochimaru's hideout not long ago just sent back a message saying that their raid failed. They didn't find any trace of Nine-Tails' Jinchuriki in Orochimaru's hideout. And with this raid, the exchange of hostages between Akatsuki and Orochimaru naturally fell through. So Sasuke and Ningxi are useless to Akatsuki. Using two children who have lost their usefulness to appease two informants who can gather information about Amatsukami is a good deal in Obsidian's view. Well, I'll arrange it now. With that, Zetsu dived into the ground. Inside Orochimaru's base, standing at the entrance of the cave, Zetsu respectfully saluted Orochimaru, who just returned from Mai. "Orochimaru-sama, did anything happen while I was away?" Orochimaru asked casually as he walked into the cave. Uchiha wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, "Shortly after you left, the Akatsuki raided this place. In order to prevent Naruto from being taken away by them, I took Naruto and Hinata to hide in the Ryuchi cave." Orochimaru suddenly stopped walking toward the cave. His snake-like eyes stared at Daodu and asked in a low voice, "What did you say? You entered the Ryuchi cave?" "Yes." Under the gaze of Orochimaru, Do lowered his head, feeling uneasy. Although it was permitted by Orochimaru to retreat into the Ryuchi cave to hide when encountering a strong enemy, Orochimaru had never allowed Naruto to practice immortality in the Ryuchi cave. Therefore, Do was worried that he would be punished by Orochimaru for acting on his own initiative. After a while, Orochimaru withdrew his gaze and continued to walk toward the cave. He asked, "What did you do in the Ryuchi cave?" Do followed Orochimaru step by step and recounted their experience in the Ryuchi cave from beginning to end. Do was overjoyed. "That's great. With Naruto, we can see the true face of immortality." Orochimaru shook his head. "These two kids need to be handed over to the Danzo immediately." Do was shocked. "What?" "Don't worry. We're just handing them over to the Danzo temporarily." After patting Do's shoulder, Orochimaru smiled and said, "Go and make the arrangements, and make sure to put on a good show for Shinichi, as if he was rescued by the Danzo. In addition, tell Naruto not to easily reveal the fact that he's practicing immortality." Guessing that Orochimaru and the Danzo have some kind of agreement, Do did not say anything more and quickly nodded. Half a day later, boom! Continuous explosions echoed in the valley. The Danzo took the lead, leading a group of root ninjas to attack the Orochimaru base in the valley. After killing more than 10 base guards, they rescued Naruto and Hinata, who were temporarily transferred here. Looking at the ferocious-looking root ninjas, Naruto was confused. He didn't understand the situation at all. Hinata was even more scared and shivered, hiding behind Naruto. Danzo indifferently glanced at the two nervous children and then loudly announced, "Nine-Tails Jinchuriki rescue successful. Poster, share." After the Umbu left, Tsunade frowned and said, "Sensei, are you going to let him do as he pleases?" The he that Tsunade was referring to was obviously Shimura Danzo, who single-handedly caused this trust vote farce. The three generations sighed and said with a tired expression, "Naruto's position carries too many people's expectations. Since he wants to try, let him try." Jiraiya was a little confused. Is it really appropriate to give the village to a person like Danzo? The three generations looked at Jiraiya and said unhappily, "It's because you are not willing to take this burden." Jiraiya shrank his neck and shut his mouth. When Danzo created public opinion in the village against the three generations had already decided to bear the responsibility of the village being destroyed, remove Naruto's position, and let Jiraiya replace them as the fifth generation Naruto. It was a pity that Jiraiya, who was used to being undisciplined, directly rejected the proposal of the three generations. As a last resort, the three generations looked for Tsunade, and the result was the same as Jiraiya. Tsunade refused almost without hesitation. Looking at the two disciples in front of him, the three generations had a headache. Every time this happened, he would unconsciously miss the four generations Naruto Minato, who died early. Time passed little by little, and the three people in Naruto's office fell into silence. No one spoke again, quietly waiting for the final result of the vote. After a long time, Shimura Danzo, Zhuan Xiao Chun, Uchiha Hyuga Hayashi, Nara Shikaku, and several other high-level members, as well as the leaders of the noble families, came to Naruto's office. Dong, slamming the cane in his hand heavily on the ground, Danzo announced to the three generations, "Heizen, the results have come out. Unfortunately, you did not pass the vote of confidence of all the Jonin. Zhuan Xiaochun took over the conversation and said, "Heizen, from now on, you will remove the title of Naruto. However, as the leader of the three generations, you have the qualification to nominate the next Naruto. Do you have anyone to choose from?" The three generations were not surprised by the result of the vote. As the head of the 5 great shinobi villages, my village, which has survived the 3 great shinobi wars, was destroyed overnight. No matter what, someone must stand up and take the blame. Therefore, the three generations calmly accepted the result of the vote and looked at Jiraiya and Tsunade. However, both Jiraiya and Tsunade avoided the eyes of the three generations and turned their faces to the side. If the three generations were gone, driven by a sense of responsibility, some of them may stand up and take the burden of Naruto, but in the case of the three generations, they have no desire for power, so they're not interested in Naruto's position. Seeing the silence of the three generations, Zhuan Xiao Chun sighed.